The anime starts by introducing us to Aryll, a kid that's in the age to receive a blessing from the goddess. In this world, it is something that the goddess blesses them with. Upon turning 10 years of age, one is bestowed a class from the goddess in a blessings ritual. After that, they become able to acquire skills appropriate for their class. As Aryll has breakfast with his family, his father, Leon, mentions how calm he is about all of this, since even he himself couldn't sleep at all due to how nervous he was about what class his son will be blessed with. Aryll's mother, Farah, says that she is actually more nervous for him than when it was her first day. Despite this, Aryll's sister, Astaire, assures them that Aryll is the best brother she could ask for, so she knows he'll be granted the most amazing class. Farah assumes that means he'll be popular with the ladies, but Astaire quickly protests, saying that he is still way young for a girlfriend. Leon reminds her that when he was Aryll's age, he had a whole flock of girls after him, so they can't be so sure. Aryll simply sighs, knowing that when his family starts fantasizing, they just never stop. Later that day, a lot of people meet at the church to begin with the ritual of blessings. The priest in charge asks the kids to step forward in turn, starting from the right side. The first kid to step forward approaches him, and the priest places his hand on his forehead to cast some kind of spell, letting him see the blessing he's receiving. He can see flames, a hammer, and the smell of iron, and the kid sees it as well, so the priest tells him that he's now a blacksmith. The kid runs to his father with excitement, claiming that he can now follow his footsteps. After that, the next kids in line follow, approaching the priest one by one to receive their blessings. Aryll waits patiently in line, without showing any kind of excitement, but his sister tries to hype him up, saying that his lineage has a strong influence on his class, so he'll get a good blessing for sure. Once he steps forward and approaches the priest, his whole family cheers him up, and several people recognize him as Leon's son, since it's hard to forget that family. This is because two advanced classes got hitched, the Sword Princess Farah and the Archmage Leon, so people expect their son to be as amazing as they are. The priest asks Aryll to close his eyes, saying that the goddess will grant them visions of his class. For some reason, when Aryll closes his eyes, he can't see anything at all, and the priest gets a little confused when he notices there's no response, even though there should be. It takes him a second to realize there's actually one explanation for this, and it's because Aryll is classless. Everyone witnessing this is in shock to hear this, but Aryll simply stands there in confusion. Once he goes back home to train, his parents try to reassure him, saying that they'll just have to work past retirement so he doesn't have to force himself to get a job. Leon clarifies there's no reason for him to think about dying, but Aryll tells him he's not going to die or sponge off them forever. Astaire asks him not to lose his temper, assuring him that his big sister will always have his back, no matter how unruly he gets. Aryll can't believe she's siding with his parents, so he clarifies that he's not down about this at all. After all, he's been studying swordsmanship with his mother ever since he was little. Even when the sword was too heavy for him, she always held his back, and it's thanks to her that his skills have improved. Surely, becoming strong would be easy if he had gotten the swordsman class and could use sword skills. But even without a class, he mostly knows how to wield a sword thanks to all that practice. Though he hardly got to practice anything, because his mother was way too strong. Aryll knows that hard work matters, so even if he has no class or skills, he is not discouraged at all. Farah admits he's very insightful for his age, and that only makes her feel proud. Leon agrees, saying that he'll surely attain greatness, and Astaire only confirms what she already knew, mentioning how great her brother is. Farah knows her son will be a big name in the future, so he'll have the most prestigious job out there for sure. Aryll realizes they're fantasizing once again, so he decides to ignore them and heads to the practice field. There, he finds two kids having a practice duel, talking about how great having skills is, since their bodies almost move on their own, making everything much easier. The duel is cut short once they notice Aryll staring at them, and they quickly recognize him as the classless kid from before. Aryll tells them he's there to train, just like everyone else, but the kids clearly don't understand why. They clarify that they're already swordsmen, so they don't need to train, and they only came here to check their skills. The kids decide to give him a demonstration, starting another duel to show him how strong they are. Aryll simply observes in silence, knowing that the first skill swordsmen learn is basic swordsmanship. Just having that alone makes them pretty capable fighters, it seems, so he decides to test something. Aryll interrupts their duel to ask one of them to have a bout with him, but this leaves them very confused, since it's ridiculous to even think about a classless person like him fighting a swordsman. Despite their doubts, Aryll assures them he'd be a good match, though this only hurts their pride, so they accept his proposal without hesitation. The kid about to fight him asks him if he has divine protection even though he's classless, just to make sure. Aryll confirms this and says that he'll be fine, so he doesn't have to hold back. Divine protection is another blessing received from the goddess, and unlike classes, everyone receives this blessing from birth. Protection is like a transparent web that protects the body and absorbs damage. However, taking too many hits can make it run out, and the person will always feel a certain amount of pain. Knowing Aryll has this blessing, the kid doesn't waste any more time, and immediately clashes swords with him, wanting to wreck him. Despite attacking with all his efforts, Errol easily blocks his attacks with his sword and attacks back. The other boy witnessing the duel gets a little confused, not knowing why his friend hasn't won already. Errol makes sure not to go easy on him, so the kid gets frustrated and asks his friend to gang up on him. Soon enough, both kids attack Errol with their swords, but he quickly dodges them and doesn't give up, liking a good challenge. After all, people closer to his skill level definitely make better practice partners. Errol notices the kids almost hit each other when he dodged their attack, so he wonders if skills don't help to enhance other abilities, like pack tactics. Knowing this, it's clear these two might not be good enough, so he decides to finish them with only one hit, not even giving them a chance to react. It's obvious Errol won the duel, but the kids aren't happy about this, so they complain about him waiting until they let their guards down. Errol simply suggests another duel, but before they can start anything, another kid comes out of nowhere and asks them to stop, asking them if they're going to start whining like that on a real battlefield. A true swordsman should know better than to act like that, so they should stop it and accept their defeat. One of the kids gets clearly mad, but his friend asks him to calm down, warning him that that red-headed swordsman is not who he thinks he is. The redhead approaches Errol, recognizing him as the son of the sword princess Farah. Knowing this, it's clear he must have inherited some innate talent from her to fight that well without a class. Even so, these two kids he fought are nothing but chumps, so he shouldn't let his victory over them go to his head. The redhead asks him to fight with her instead, saying that she'll show him and his classless butt what a true swordsman can do. With this, the kids assume that she is definitely related to the head of the guard, and she confirms this, saying that Captain Evans is her father. Upon hearing that name, Errol remembers he's the guy who would occasionally show up and ask his mother for help hunting demons. The redhead assures him that her father is an extraordinary person, since not only is he a master at wielding a sword, but he's a decisive leader who many people respect. And yet, despite all of that, the sword princess Farah is always considered the #1 swordsman in the village, and that's something that's never going to sit right with her. Hearing this, Errol assumes that she's basically upset with his mother and is just taking it out on him. The girl only gets more upset with his words, and she accuses him of thinking that his mother is the best, like everyone else. Of course, Errol doesn't deny it, saying that his mother is literally the strongest person in the village. The redhead isn't happy about this at all, so she reminds him that children inherit the talents of their parents, and that's why she's going to beat him and prove that her family is stronger than his. Before the duel, she warns him that she's been a swordsman for a year now, but she never lets a big ego keep her from training. She also learned the blade from her father, and she's already attained intermediate skills, so there's no way he can beat her. Errol understands that she respects her father and that she's made considerable efforts as a swordsman, but he warns her that his mother drilled him in how to wield the blade too, so he doesn't intend to lose. Without wasting any more time, the two of them clash swords in a duel, swiftly moving at high speed. The two kids from before can only stand back and watch, clearly stunned by their skills. They can't even believe Errol is truly classless, since he's holding his own against someone with intermediate skills. The redhead is considerably stronger than them, but Errol can see that her anger is making her strikes too sloppy, so he can win if he takes advantage of that. Once he has the chance, he attacks her from an opening, but to his surprise, she uses a technique called twin blade slice. This pushes him back considerably, though she admits being surprised that he managed to block at such close range. Errol holds his abdomen in pain and asks her what that was, wanting to know how she managed to attack him from two places at once. She simply explains that it's an attack skill, a technique that unleashes 2 strikes in one swing, something a no-class like him can't defend against. Errol tells her he wouldn't be so sure, and the girl admits he has guts, if nothing else. Some days later, Errol wakes up in his room, but immediately goes back to sleep, so Astaire tries to wake him up. Before she can try anything silly, he suddenly sits up, realizing that it's morning already. After breakfast, Astaire asks him if he'll be off to special training again today, reminding him that he doesn't have to work so hard, because she'll create a world where he can live in total comfort. Errol simply ignores her fantasies and heads out, leaving her sister worried about him. Astaire can't help but be concerned about her little brother, since he's been staying out late ever since that day he came home all beat up. Farah reminds her that Errol can handle himself, and to reassure her, she decides to show her daughter a box with countless broken swords. She explains that these are all the practice swords that Errol has been using every day. Sparring some kids his age seems to have really lit a fire in him, so he hasn't stopped ever since. Astaire admits that's actually impressive, since not having a class hasn't slowed him down at all, and if anything, he's thriving now. Even so, she still wants to make a kinder world for Errol, and nothing can change her mind. In another scene, we see Errol training in the woods with a sword, managing to make 2 cuts at once, like the redhead did. He smiles in satisfaction, knowing that taking all those hits on purpose just to learn it really paid off. Suddenly, a goblin jumps from the bushes to attack him, but Errol reacts immediately by using Twin Blade Slice perfectly. The goblin instantly falls defeated, but Errol then hears the roar of some kind of large monster way too close to the village. He knows he has to alert the guard right away, but before he can go, he hears the scream of a kid coming from that direction. Errol decides there's no time to get help, so he runs to help whoever needs it himself. Hiding behind the bushes, he manages to spot the redhead he fought at the practice grounds, clearly hurt after fighting against a huge hobgoblin. Those monsters never come near here, but Errol notices a sword practice board on a tree and assumes that the redhead has been doing the same as him, training in the woods. The monsters must have taken notice, and this time a big one managed to find her. Errol prepares to attack, knowing that given its large size, he needs to focus on his footing more than snapping his wrist. Timing is everything, but he has what it takes to beat that monster, so he just has to focus. The redhead simply waits for her death, knowing she can't fight anymore now, and this surely will be her end. Before the hobgoblin can finish her, Errol uses Twin Blade Slice in the right moment, completely crossing the monster's middle. She simply stares in shock as the monster collapses, and due to the blood loss, she collapses as well, so Errol makes sure to catch her. He notices her divine protection is out, and she has to recover quickly, so he asks her where her holy water is. When Errol realizes her bottle is broken on the ground, he decides to give her his own holy water. Surprisingly, after she drinks it and recovers from her fatal wounds, she's not happy at all, and immediately asks him what that technique he just used was. Errol tells her he used Twin Blade Slice, but she doesn't even believe him, since that's a complex move that they can only pull off by having the skill. He admits that it surely is complex, but that's why he dedicated extra effort into learning it. Simply put, anybody with enough strength and speed can do it if they get the timing right, since the power comes from momentum. Errol clarifies that she's the whole reason he figured this out in the first place, because she used that skill on him over and over again during their fight. Seeing and experiencing it up close is how he learned, and he's thought about her every day since then. This gets her a little flustered, but leaving that aside, she's left very confused, because she knows that it isn't so simple, but she still saw him do it. Errol tells her that even if he doesn't look like it, he truly hates losing, so he wanted to make sure he won the next time they fought, and he trained hard for that purpose. Once she finally understands that, she suggests that they have their rematch right now. After all, he saved her life and shared his holy water with her, so it's the least she can do to pay him back. Errol accepts her proposal, but he starts the duel with a surprise third slash in the technique, taking her off guard. She doesn't understand how he managed to do that, as the technique is called Twin Blade Slice, because there are only 2 slashes. He explains that his Twin Blade Slice isn't based on a skill, so it has no restrictions like hers. That means he can change it up as much as he wants, depending on his abilities. Despite being a witness to this, she still can't believe something like that, so she tells him that even if he can use Twin Blade Slice, it's nothing more than classless fakery in the end. That's why it makes no sense for his technique to be stronger than one from a real swordsman. Errol knows she's too stubborn for him to convince her, so he decides to sort it out by finishing the duel. She prepares for the attack with the 3 slashes, but to her surprise, Errol is much faster than her, so he manages to corner her in the end. He explains that he became faster thanks to her, since after seeing her refined twin blade slice up close again, he adjusted the strength of his swing and improved it. Knowing this, she has no other choice than to accept her defeat, so Errol leaves the place after his victory. A few days later, Farah mentions during dinner that Evan's little one set off for Brescia today. Brescia is a place they call the City of Swords, and she used to work there a long time ago, since she was in a guild before she got married. Upon hearing this, Errol starts to think that he'd like to go there as well, because he wants to know how strong he can get without a class of his own. Now we see a carriage heading to Brescia, the City of Swords, and some folks in the carriage talk about their skills. A woman mentions that she's a dual swordsman, and the man in front of her tells her he's a barbarian. She notices he's looking down at her, so she reminds him that they're both advanced classes, and they should work together. The man clarifies that he hates being anywhere near people who dress in ridiculous outfits like hers, but she tells him that dual swordsmen are all about speed, so dressing light is key. The driver interrupts their banter to tell them that they're both amazing. Even among advanced classes, theirs are especially powerful. Having that in mind, he asks them if they could put that power to work, since an orc horde is blocking the way, and they're all in danger. Both the woman and the man freak out, seeing that there's a king orc leading the horde. People usually send whole parties to hunt those things down, so it'd be impossible for them to do anything. A lady in the carriage begs for their help, but the man clarifies he already has his hands full, keeping himself alive. He pushes both the lady and her children out of the way to run away, and the dual swordsman follows right after him, saying that she refuses to risk her life for others. Having no other choice, Errol decides decides to show himself and runs directly towards the orc horde, taking them down one by one at an incredible speed. Everyone left in the carriage can only observe in awe, noticing how he's moving so fast that it seems like he vanishes every time. The driver assumes he's using a blink dash skill, which is pretty impressive, but difficult to use when one's surrounded, so he wants to see what he's planning after that. When several orcs surround Errol, he starts spinning around with his sword, gracefully taking them down in a swift move. The driver can't believe what he's witnessing, because there's no doubt he's using a counter move skill only the Supreme Class Sword Princess can use, called Blade Dance. However, the Sword Princess is a class only women can achieve, so he doesn't know how he can use it. After getting rid of all the orcs, Errol goes for the big one, managing to take down a king orc with one movement of his sword. With the problem solved, Errol calmly heads to the carriage and asks the driver to proceed to Brescia, since he wants to train there and get stronger. The driver laughs nervously and tells him that he's already plenty strong as it is, and the kid in the carriage excitedly asks him what class he is, but Errol clarifies he doesn't have a class. In a change of scene, we see something that happened 5 years ago, after Errol learned how to use Twin Blade Slice. When his mother sees this for the first time, she's almost sure she must be dreaming, and she still hasn't accepted in her heart that her son is classless. Farah starts crying, blaming herself for being a bad mother, but Errol stops her and clarifies that this isn't a dream, since he really learned how to do the Twin Blade Slice. It took a lot of practice, but he managed to reproduce it all on his own, and he wants to recreate other skills as well, so he'd like her to show him her Sword Princess skills. After he learns those, he wants to go to Brescia and see how well he can tough it out. Farah stops crying all of a sudden, and her expression morphs into pure happiness, so she immediately runs to tell her husband and her daughter about it, saying that Arl is a prodigy. Now 5 years after that, Arl finally arrives in the City of Swords, Brescia, a city full of all different kinds of swordsmen. The driver mentions plenty of these swordsmen are advanced classes too, and Errol tells him he is as well. After all, an ordinary driver shouldn't be able to precisely identify swordsman skills on the spot like that. Hearing this, the driver admits that he's actually of the advanced whole knight class, but he works as a driver sometimes because fighting battles on the daily gets exhausting. Sometimes he just likes to take trips while working as a driver to refresh himself. Errol thinks about it, saying that he never considered a life like that, but it's pretty interesting. The driver tells him that if this is his first time in the city, he should start by getting affiliated with one of the guilds. Most of the swordsmen there enter battle tournaments and live off the winnings, but he can't join the tourney if he isn't part of a guild. Another one is the Sword Road, a guild that welcomes anybody with a blade, even hunters and thieves. The driver laughs and asks him to be careful because there can be some nasty guilds out there. After he leaves, Errol enters the city, where plenty of guilds are out looking for new members. One of them is the Cavalries, a noble guild made up of knight classes, who welcome anyone who recognizes the value of mutual progress. Another one is the Sword Road, a guild that welcomes anybody with a blade, even hunters and thieves. Errol walks around the city in search of a guild to join, but a girl approaches him from the back and tries to surprise him. Errol dodges her without even noticing, but the girl only assumes he must be talented because of that. She quickly stands up with a smile and tells him that her guild happens to be recruiting new members. The girl immediately offers him the enrollment contract for her guild, but Errol simply rejects her and walks away. She quickly grabs onto him as he walks, asking him how he rejects her without even looking at the contract. Errol clarifies that nobody is ever that desperate to recruit new members, not unless they're a minor guild that's short on members. This comment obviously affects her, but she tries to keep her cool and says that their guild is quite famous. Seeing that Errol is still playing hard to get, the girl decides to throw in a special perk, saying that he'll have the privilege of going on a full-day date with her. Without hesitation, Errol tells her he has no interest in her whatsoever. Still, deep down, he finds her attitude very familiar somehow, and it reminds him of his sister, like how she thinks of herself like a total bombshell, despite being flat as board. Leaving that aside, he asks her which guild around the city is the most powerful. The girl finds his question a little rude, but she answers nonetheless, saying that the most powerful guild is Black Blade, since they've got 8 A-rank swordsmen. Errol decides to go there, but the guard at the entrance tells him he has to pass a test in order to enter the guild. When Errol heads to reception, he finds a long line of people waiting to do that test, and he gets pretty excited. Once it's finally his turn, the receptionist tells him he must register first for the test, and they require participants to be advanced swordsman class or higher. Errol clarifies he's classless, and the receptionist laughs on his face, saying that he has to leave in that case. The other people in line start talking about him, saying that no guild is ever going to accept someone without a class. Errol asks the receptionist to make an exception, since he's confident he can pass the test if they let him take it. The receptionist once again rejects him, saying that those are the rules and there's nothing he can do about it. Just then, an A-rank swordsman enters the place, and the receptionist completely forgets about Errol. Having no other choice, Errol decides to try luck elsewhere, but all the other guilds reject him for the same reason, since none of them want a classless member. After quite many failures, Errol sits down for a bit, feeling defeated, because he didn't think just passing the screening would be such a problem. Just then, he remembers the letter of recommendation his mother gave him, something he can give to the people at her old guild. He thought it was excessive, but now he knows that her mother probably predicted this situation. Arel doesn't waste any time and decides that he'll head to that guild, but just then, the girl from before appears out of nowhere. She assumes he hasn't found any guild to join yet, so once again offers him to join hers. Arel simply walks away from her, but she quickly follows him and confesses that their guild is on the verge of being disbanded because they don't have enough people. He tells her that's not his problem, but the girl even gets to her knees to beg, asking him to consider it charity or something. Arel still rejects her offer, so the girl desperately tells him that she will even lick his shoes if he agrees to it. However, by the time she looks up, Arel is already gone, but she tells him that she is not going to give up. Arel continues searching for the address on the letter, and when the girl finds him again, he tells her that she should be using her time to search for someone who might actually agree to her offer. She insists on at least showing him their guild, saying that it's actually pretty close so he can just look around and see if he changes his mind. Arel seems a little impressed by how huge the building is, so the girl reminds him that they're actually a famous guild. He asks her why they're so short on members in that case, so she admits that they're a mere shadow of their former glory, and their guild is the weakest of all right now. Despite that, she assures him that they're going to reclaim their golden age. As long as the Dual Sword King leads them, the Dragon Fang is immortal. Arel pauses after hearing that, and just then he remembers that his mother told him that the guild she was in was led by a Dual Sword King who named the guild after one of his skills, Dragon Fang. That's the guild he was searching for, so he decides to come in and see it for himself. The girl, whose name is Lilia, asks him to take a seat, but a man with a bottle of alcohol appears out of nowhere. This man is apparently Lilia's father, so she immediately scolds him for drinking again, reminding him that the doctor asked him to stop. Arel assumes he's the Dual Sword King, but he's missing his right arm. The man simply asks him to leave, saying that this guild is doomed, so there's no point in anyone joining. He leaves before Lilia can protest, so she tells Arel that her dad was one of the top 2 swordsmen of Brezhia in the past, but ever since he lost an arm, he's been drinking non-stop, giving up on everything. She assumes that this makes him want to join them even less, but to her surprise, Arel clarifies he actually wants to join them. After all, he couldn't join any other guild even if he wanted to. Lilia excitedly offers him the contract again, so Arel decides to sign it this time, finally sealing the deal. However, when she finds out that he's classless, her smile immediately falls. Lilia calmly grabs a sword and looks at him with a threatening gaze, asking him to rescind that contract right now if he wants to keep on living. Arel asks her why, and she tells him that it's common practice for everybody who joins a guild to at least have basic swordsmanship skills of a class like swordsman or knight. He acts completely clueless about this, so Lilia starts freaking out, saying that he acted so high and mighty that she never thought he'd be classless. Hearing all those screams, another girl called Reiner comes in the room, wanting to know what's going on. Lilia runs towards her while crying, telling her what happened. When Reiner hears that the new member is classless, she immediately recognizes him. Arel has no idea of what she's talking about, so she reminds him that they're from the same village, and they used to train together. He assures her that they never met before, saying that he would surely remember a beauty like her.
Way to James!
Reiner's face goes red at that, but Arel then remembers the redhead he used to train with, though he was the son of the Evans. She clarifies that the Evans only had a daughter, and that is her. Just then, Arel realizes that the redhead he fought several times was actually a girl, so he apologizes, saying that he didn't think they were the same person. Reiner understands his confusion, since she surely looks different now that her hair has grown out so long. Arel looks down and mentions that other things grew as well.
Way to James!
But he brushes it off and looks away. Lilia realizes that Arel is the classless guy Reiner told her about, the one she couldn't beat in a fight. She really thought she was just joking about it, but Reiner assures her that she won't lose to him anymore, since she's gotten much stronger over these past 5 years. Knowing this is the perfect chance, Reiner mentions that there's a practice field downstairs, and she wants them to have a bout for old time's sake. Of course, Arel never declines a good fight opportunity, so he accepts and heads to the practice field with them. Lilia decides to observe, but she's still a bit skeptical about Arel's abilities, so she asks Reiner not to go too far. Once the bout starts, Reiner immediately jumps at him with Twin Blade Slice, the same skill as 5 years ago. Arel gets on guard, knowing that it's a bit suspicious that she's using that same old skill, even though she knows he can use his own to cancel hers out. He tries exactly this, but for some reason, Reiner's Twin Blade Slice still gets to him. She warns him that he let his guard down, and she's gotten stronger, so that was a mistake. Reiner lets her sword sink into the ground and tells him that it's about 5 times heavier than the conventional ones, so he can't win by just countering her with the same skills. Thanks to the Power Bladesman's skill Brute Strength, her attacks hit harder than ever, and she's going to take him down with that overwhelming power. Arel admits that she's clearly trained hard over the years, because not only she hits hard, but her attacks are still as swift as a regular sword would be. With that, she'll beat him, even if he keeps taking hits like this. Despite that, Arel asks her if it really was a good idea to tell him, because now he knows her secret to her true strength. Reiner assures him that there's no problem at all, since it wouldn't be fair if she didn't give him a handicap. Errol understands this, but he tells her that if that's the limit of her speed, then he won't even have to bother taking any more hits. Reiner decides to prove him wrong and immediately launches at him with her sword, creating an opening to finish him in one swing. She's quick to claim her victory, but freezes in place when Errol suddenly disappears and hits her from behind. This leaves her clearly confused, because she's sure that her sword struck him. Errol clarifies that she let her guard down as well, since that was just an afterimage, known the shadow skill. Reiner tells him that's impossible, because that's a supreme class skill even amongst swordsmen. While he dodges her attacks, Errol explains that he simply learned to move really fast, and it took a lot of effort. Reiner desperately tries to hit him with her sword, failing over and over again, getting fooled by his afterimages. Errol takes advantage of this and attacks her from behind again, but he says that even though he hit her, she didn't really lose any divine protection, which is actually amazing. Reiner smiles confidently and explains that power bladesmen also have the gut skill, so his slash attacks aren't enough to cause her any real damage. Knowing this, Errol decides to use Obtain Counter to hit her, a sword princess counter skill that his mother specialized in. Reiner immediately falls defeated after only one hit, and much to her disbelief, Lilia announces that Arel is the winner. Errol can see Reiner's frustration after losing, so he tells her that she was tough, but it turns out that he got even tougher. His resolve crumbles immediately when he sees Reiner's about to cry, and Lilia offers some holy water to her. He has no idea of what happened, since he only complimented her, but Reiner stands up, clearly flustered, and clarifies that she isn't crying. She runs away before any of them can say anything, but her screams in the distance confirm just how frustrated she is after losing to him, even though she worked so hard these past 5 years. That aside, Lilia decides to sit down with Errol, and the smile she had at the beginning easily comes back to welcome him to Dragonfang, as she says that they would love to have him in their guild. Arel mentions the extreme change in her attitude, but Lilia acts completely clueless, assuring him that she believed in him from the very beginning. He decides to ignore that blatant lie and instead asks her to explain why she said this guild is totally screwed. Lilia hesitantly tells him that they're in debt, but despite how much they owe, there's a guild comp battle in a week. They just have to win, and then they'll have enough money to pay back their loans and have cash to spare, but they need at least 3 people to enter. Errol mentions that it's amazing that Reiner stuck around in these circumstances. Lilia explains that when she was just a kid, a lot of guilds rejected her, but ever since her father brought her in, she's been a loyal member of Dragonfang. Knowing that, Errol tells her there's nothing to worry about in that case, since they just have to win that competition. Lilia doesn't look too confident about it, and she tells him that the 3 of them will have to beat a group of 5, and they have no idea how strong these people will be. Despite the risks, Arel just says that it sounds actually fun, because he wants to fight tough opponents to refine his techniques, and that's the whole reason he came here. After spending the night in the guild, Errol meets with the girls again, saying that it's been a while since he's been in a bed, so he slept like a baby all night. Reiner doesn't say anything, so he assumes that she's still holding a grudge against him after losing yesterday. Leaving that aside, Lilia tells them that she has an important announcement to make now that they're all here. Dragonfang has finally obtained 3 members, and they have the number of people required to participate in a team battle. Therefore, they will be entering the guild competition this weekend. Arel asks her if they will get enough prize money to keep the guild going if they win that, and Lilia quickly confirms this. She explains that the competition is a one-on-one elimination style match, so the guild that has no members left loses. Guild teams are limited to no more than 5 members, so they'll have to do their best as a group of 3. Reiner mentions that it will be a tough fight, but they have no choice. Hearing her concern, Lilia reminds her that it's rare to get paired against A-ranked swordsmen, and they've got 2 B ranks on their team, so it should be fine. Arel decides to ask her what she means by A rank and B rank, since she mentioned it before. Reiner finds it hard to believe that he doesn't know something like that either, but she explains that it's a rank that shows how strong an individual swordsman is. Lilia clarifies that there are a total of 4 ranks, and of the 500 swordsmen here in Brescia, around 20 are A rank. Reiner and her are both B rank, and since he beat Reiner, his abilities possibly fall around B rank as well. As long as they don't go up against an A rank, they can surely make it through, so they have to do their best. Just then, Lilia remembers that the tourney bracket should be available at the Colosseum now, so she decides to go check out which guild they'll be up against. Once she's gone, Reiner decides to go training, but Errol stops her to mention that she said she is a power bladesman, so he wants to know what skill he has aside from brute strength. Reiner tells him that she also has the gut skill, which makes her divine protection last longer. Errol seems interested in learning that, so after thinking for a bit, he suddenly approaches her and grabs her hands to ask her to hit him with her sword still sheathed. Reiner suddenly gets flustered, and she immediately rejects him, asking him to ask someone else. Arel insists, saying that he wants her to do it and that they should use this as a chance to build a relationship. That idea only leaves her more shocked, so Reiner nervously says that she doesn't know how to hit someone in a pleasurable honorable way, so they should start with something more normal. Just then, Errol realizes that there's been a huge misunderstanding, so he clarifies that he said that he wanted her to hit him because he wants to reproduce the guts skill. Guts is the same as being able to take a hit, and that's why it would be more effective for him to take hits when he doesn't have his divine protection up to learn that skill. Reiner clearly doesn't understand his logic, so she reminds him that skills are a blessing from the goddess, and they're not something he just chooses to get himself. Despite that, Errol reminds her that she saw his twin blade slice and his shadow skill. Reiner can't argue against that, so she heads to the practice field with him. He asks her for her sword, and Reiner reluctantly offers it to him, asking him what he's trying to do. After all, this is a custom-made sword that's 5 times heavier than a normal one, so he would never be able to swing it. Ignoring her statement, Errol grabs the sword and swiftly unsheathes it, firmly swinging it towards her without faltering. Reiner is a little stunned after seeing this, and she asks him how it is possible for him to handle her sword without the brute strength skill. Errol simply tells her that he has more than brute strength. Shadow and twin blade slice are also skills that he obtained by drilling them daily, so she should be convinced by now that effort really isn't meaningless in the face of talent. Reiner finally admits the truth and apologizes, saying that if effort were meaningless, she would still be nothing but a mere swordsman. Errol returns the sword to her, and she accepts to help him with his special training, though she clarifies that she won't be holding back, and she's really going to hit him. Knowing this, Errol promises not to complain, and tells her that he's glad to share a hometown with such a fine lady. Reiner gets a little flustered with his charming smile, but she immediately turns defensive and hits him with her sheathed sword, asking him not to tease her. After a while training, Lilia suddenly appears with terrible news, saying that she found out which guild they're going up against. Unfortunately for them, they have to fight the current top guild, Black Blade, and they've got 8 whole A-rank swordsmen. Worse yet, the guild boss is vicious as a viper, so he'll definitely marshal his forces to wipe them out. Despite the terrible news, Lilia tells them that they have no other choice but to win now, so they have to come together as a team connected in body and soul. Just then, she realizes that Reiner and Errol were already fighting, and he's been taking all the hits, apparently. Reiner gets a little nervous and explains that it was just part of training, but Lilia isn't convinced at all, since all she sees is that she's taking out her stress on the newbie. Errol suddenly stands up like nothing happened, and mentions how hungry he is. Reiner is a bit surprised he has an appetite after that, and Lilia asks him to be more concerned about getting holy water for his injuries. After a lot of training, the guild competition day finally arrives, so the 3 of them head to the Colosseum. Some people are already talking about the match between Dragonfang and Black Blade, since they haven't even heard about Dragonfang in ages. It's a battle between the old top guild and the new one, but most people don't want to bet their money on any other guild than Black Blade. Lilia gets mad when she hears the comments from some people there, and Errol mentions that he didn't know people could bet here. Reiner explains that all matches held at the Colosseum can be gambled on, and Lilia excitedly says that the current odds for betting on them are an impressive 20-1. Errol doesn't seem very impressed, and Lilia suddenly gets angry and says that that means no one expects them to win. However, this could be the perfect chance for them to strike it rich, since they're screwed if they lose anyway, and no prize money means no more guild. In that case, nothing's wrong with betting on them winning, even if it takes a miracle. Reiner tries to make Lilia calm down, but the blonde suddenly confesses that she took out another loan using their home base as collateral and bet it all on them, so if they win, their lives will be changed forever. That way, people won't talk down to them with that poverty guild and former glory crap anymore. Reiner reminds her what will happen if they lose, but Lilia refuses to listen and says that it doesn't matter because they're screwed if they lose either way. So, if they're going to go down, then they'll do it in a blaze of glory. Suddenly, a man laughs at her determination and mentions that she's apparently doing her best to sustain her father's guild. He heard she's recruited a classless member, so he wanted to cheer them on, since he's upset that a once rival guild has fallen on such hard times. Errol asks Reiner if that man is the guy Lilia mentioned before, and she confirms this, saying that he's Georg, the guild boss of their opponents, Black Blade. Georg tells Lilia that he wanted to lend a helping hand because of that, so he did them a favor and exerted his influence to match their guilds against each other. Lilia isn't happy at all about this, since it was clearly a trap, but Georg clarifies that a battle between old and new will put them in the spotlight, so they now have the opportunity to get their hands on some serious money, only if they can defeat their A-rank swordsmen, of course. Georg laughs maliciously at them, but Lilia tells him that they will win without a doubt. After he leaves, Errol mentions that it didn't feel like he wanted to help, and Reiner clarifies that he actually wants to completely obliterate their guild today. Sometime later, the main event finally starts, and everyone's waiting to see the guild battle between Black Blade and Dragonfang. Errol notices that Georg isn't on the list of contenders, so they're probably going easy on them. Lilia asks him not to be ridiculous, and reminds him that their entire team is A-rank swordsmen, so they're not holding back at all. Reiner tells him that this is an even more aggressive lineup than usual, but Errol is apparently glad to hear that, since he's hoping to see some interesting skills. Lilia warns him that the fate of their guild is riding on this, so he should take it seriously. Finally, the host announces that the fencer, Geo, from Black Blade will battle against the classless Errol from Dragonfang. Even she can't believe that he's classless, and this shocks most of the public as well. Geo isn't happy at all about having to fight a classless ridiculous bloke as an A rank himself, since he wanted to have fun with the girls instead. As soon as the battle begins, Gio immediately uses Blink Dash to appear in front of Errol in less than a second, giving him a critical thrust. Lilia gets alarmed when she sees his sword going through Errol, but Reiner asks her to look closely. Just then, Errol quickly disappears, letting them know that it was only an afterimage from his shadow skill. Gio notices this and thinks that he already has figured it all out, but when he tries attacking Aurel again, he's fooled by another afterimage. This leaves him very confused, and he quickly notices that there are two afterimages at the same time. Still, Gio decides that it doesn't matter, since he'll just hit them both at the same time with a Blink Dash. Just then, he's shocked to see that there's actually a third one, so he desperately tries to fight them, not knowing which one is real. When he least expects it, Aurel hits him with his sword, saying that he's the real one. Gio falls defeated, saying that creating 3 afterimages is impossible, but Aurel tells him that his mother always made at least 5 during training, and she wasn't even going all out on him. The host announces that Errol is the winner, so everyone cheers for his victory. Despite how impressive that was, Errol knows that he couldn't quite imitate Gio's critical thrust, so he's got more training to do. He quietly waits for the next match, and people in the public can't even believe that he's truly classless. Georg doesn't look as happy and confident as before, but he decides to simply observe closely. In the next round, Errol defeats another A rank with Twin Blade Slice, and in the following round, he uses Shadow Skill to fool his opponent again. Reiner is surprised that he's defeated 3 A ranks in no time at all, and Lilia gets very excited, saying that he can pull off the miraculous perfect sweep. There's no way she can beat people like that, so that's why she's cheering him on like her life depends on it. With only 2 more rounds left, Errol now fights against a shield swordsman who doesn't believe that he's classless, so he asks him to stop with his lies. Errol just tells him to believe whatever he wants, and mentions that shield swordsmen sure are tough to beat. Since he can't land any critical hits, he just has to wear his divine protection down bit by bit. The man tells him that he doesn't need his compliments, and it's already weird enough that he's able to hold his own in the first place. Errol clarifies that it's not weird, since he paid the price for it by putting in tremendous effort. The shield swordsman tells him that effort can only get him so far in life, and that's why they have classes and skills. He suddenly launches at him with a strong shield bash, but Errol manages to swiftly block it with foresight, the skill he suffered the hardest to learn from among his mother's sword princess repertoire. Thanks to this, Errol finally gets rid of that annoying shield with a kick, and the man mentions that he knows that move from somewhere. Errol tells him that he learned it by imitating the barbarian he fought earlier, though his hip rotation and the angle of his foot wasn't quite right. He tries again and harshly kicks the man's torso, giving him quite a blow. The man claims that it's impossible to achieve something like that so quickly, and Errol admits that there are complicated skills that require far more practice to master, but some he can mostly pull off after one look. To prove this, he picks up the man's shield and imitates his moves, managing to parry just in time. After that, he uses shield bash and immediately takes him down, realizing that the technique goes well with the blink dash he learned from Gio. Aurel is the winner again, and the people in the public are stunned, still questioning the fact that he's classless. Their disbelief goes to the point that some people are asking to disqualify him, but the host simply asks them to calm down. She announces that she's been informed the tournament administrators have made a decision, and they will hereby publicly disclose the class ID that Errol submitted prior to the tournament. Errol isn't against this, obviously, so the host uses a magic crystal ball to show everyone the class ID. With this, they confirm that Aurel is indeed classless, so the public cheers once again, now believing in him. Georg gets more irritated by the second, and Lilia looks determined, knowing that this will work. For once, Reiner agrees with her, saying that it really looks like he can win this, which is great. To her surprise, Lilia scolds her, saying that she should have told her earlier that Errol was this strong. After all, she could have used her dad's treasures and weapons to take out more loans and maximize their bet. Reiner clarifies that that would have been going overboard, and she didn't think Errol would get this far either. In fact, she wonders what kind of training he did during those 5 years they were apart, because beating those A ranks is crazy work. Lilia says that she has to make preparations as soon as this competition's over, but Reiner reminds her that they're not even guaranteed the win yet, so she can't throw an after party like that. Despite her assumptions, Lilia clarifies that she meant the preparations for a marriage certificate. After all, even if they lose and have to flee from the loan sharks, reviving the guild is more than possible as long as she gets Errol tied down, so she absolutely can't let him get away. Reiner is a little creeped out by her expression, but Lilia shamelessly says that she will do anything to keep the guild going. A dark aura surrounds her as she says this, and even though he didn't hear a word, Errol suddenly feels a cold chill go down his spine. Without further ado, the host announces that the final swordsman from Blackblade will now take the stage. She introduces him as the master swordsman, Masamune, and Aurel is surprised to see he has a rare curved sword with a thin blade. Masamune confirms it's a katana, and Reiner explains that he's a swordsman of the East, an advanced class samurai. Lilia mentions that she heard nothing about them having a guild member like that, so he must be their secret weapon. Without wasting any more time, the battle begins, and Errol immediately feels danger even before Masamune draws his sword, so he knows that it is risky to get too close. Masamune notices this and admits that he's quite sharp for that. He knew that he could not win with any run-of-the-mill attacks, thus his plan was to lure him in and end it with his ultimate skill. Knowing this, Arl actually decides to approach him slowly, taking him off guard. Masamune mentions how odd it is that he divulged his strategy, and yet he still chooses to dig his own grave by approaching him. Arl clarifies that they're stuck in a stalemate unless he makes a move, and he really wants to see his ultimate skill. Masamune smiles and tells him that's not possible, because the moment his skill activates, he will be face down in the dirt. Despite his warning, Arl continues approaching him, saying that he's quite confident in his speed as well. He gets even closer to him, but Masamune still doesn't make a move, waiting for the right moment. Arl assumes that his ultimate skill is one that starts with the sword still fully sheathed, and that only makes him more curious, wanting to find out what it is. He knows that it all comes down to the moment he steps into his range, so the faster one will win. As soon as Arl steps into his range, Masamune immediately uses his ultimate skill, Yai Slice. However, just as the blade is about to go through Arl's neck, he entirely vanishes. This leaves him clearly confused and alarmed, and Arl suddenly appears behind him, saying that he may be the fastest that he's seen in this city, but he was taught by someone even faster than he is. Lastly, he uses Piercing Tempest, giving Masamune multiple thrusting strikes in just a second. Lilia quickly recognizes this as the Sword Princess ultimate skill, though the rest of the public didn't even see what happened due to how fast that was. Seeing Masamune on the ground, the host finally announces that Arl is the winner. That way, the battle between the former top and current top guilds is won by Dragonfang in a spectacular clean sweep. Most people in the public are mad that they lost so much money on their bets, but the girls are happier than ever, knowing that they saved their guild. Lilia jumps to hug Arel, trying to show how grateful she is, but he simply dodges her, making her fall. He apologizes, saying that he has a habit of dodging when people pounce at him, and she has to blame his sister for that. Despite that, Lilia is still happy now that their guild is saved, and they made some serious money on top of it. Reiner also approaches him for a hug, but immediately regrets it and changes her mind, saying that she got caught up in the moment. Errol tells her that if she's going to hug him, he'd like her to take her armor off first. Reiner didn't hear that right, but he decides not to repeat himself. On the other hand, Lilia jumps at him for a hug again, but Errol dodges her again, making her cry. Soon after that, they return to the guild to celebrate, and Lilia doesn't hesitate to have a celebratory drink after a win like that. Errol is just surprised that she's old enough to drink, but him and Reiner just settle for some juice. Lilia keeps asking him to marry her all the time, but he simply rejects her every time with no hesitation. She tries to convince him by saying that she's an older woman ready to satisfy all his youthful desires, but Errol tells her that he would prefer to get married to someone more like Reiner. Reiner immediately gets flustered, and she asks him to at least come up with a better lie than that to turn her down. He doesn't understand why she thinks he's lying, and Reiner explains that people have always said she's like a man because all she does is swing swords around. Errol admits that he made the same mistake, but he disagrees when she says that she doesn't have any womanly charms. That aside, Reiner reminds him that she's aiming to become the strongest swordsman, so she doesn't have time to worry about being feminine. Lilia smiles mischievously, realizing that Reiner doesn't even know how to use the biggest weapon in her arsenal, so she's not a threat to her. With that in mind, she mentions how tired he must be and offers to help him relax back in his room with a nice massage. Reiner notices Lilia's hand trailing up Errol's leg in a suggestive way, so she immediately calls her out, saying how indecent that is. Still, Lilia clarifies that she's just talking about a massage, but Errol calmly says that he'd like to get one from Reiner in that case.
James on the drive!
Soon after that, they're both in the training grounds, and Errol just receives all of Reiner's hits, which is less of a massage and more like torture. He clarifies that being physically pushed to the brink of death is the only way for him to master the guts skill. He can't pull it off without the help of a friend who's both capable and trustworthy, so this is the best way. Reiner admits that she's flattered he finds her trustworthy, but Lilia reminds him that she's too much of a meathead. Lilia's father, Rod, suddenly appears to ask them to keep it down, wanting to know what all the ruckus is for. He asks them if they're training out of frustration because they got thrashed this afternoon, but Lilia clarifies that they actually won their match against Blackblade. Rod is a little surprised at this, but he immediately laughs and says that they probably sent their newbies against them. Lilia tells him that all of their opponents were A rank, though Errol beat them all himself. Rod is left speechless after hearing this, since he had no idea that kid was really that strong. Lilia explains that they also made plenty of money to cover their operating costs thanks to the bets she made, and the guild is back on the up and up with Errol here. Despite all of this, Rod sighs and tells them they're way too optimistic about this, because someone that strong will get poached by a better guild in no time, and then they'll be screwed again. Lilia assures him there's no need to worry about that, because she's going to marry Errol soon. Errol quickly says that he made no such promise, so Lilia complains and tells him that he had to at least play along. Her father asks her to give up already, because all of this is utterly pointless. Errol stops him right there and admits that Lilia may be an idiot, but she's far better than losers who just give up and do nothing. Rod gets clearly offended by this, but Errol asks him when he's going to stop moping around and act his age, since he can still wield a sword with one arm. That comment isn't taken very well, so Rod aggressively grabs him by the collar and tells him that he doesn't know a thing, since a dual swordsman who can't wield two swords is left with nothing but a bunch of unusable skills. Errol admits that he's right by saying that he doesn't know, because he's classless and doesn't have a single skill of his own. Rod lets go of him and leaves after that, and Errol mentions that he's incredibly strong despite whatever skills he's lost, which is such a waste. Lilia thanks him for what he said, since she thinks that his words may have gotten through to him a bit, and hopefully that will encourage him to do something. Reiner agrees with her, saying that Rod is an amazing person, so he just needs to rediscover his passion, and he'll be back in action. Errol says that he wants him to show him some skills as well, since he's sure he can learn a lot from a dual swordsman, even if he's not in peak form. Lilia then tells him that since there are so many skills he wants to learn, he should try out a dungeon. Errol has no idea of what that is, so Reiner explains that there's an enormous dungeon underneath this city. It's a place full of traps and swarming with monsters, perfect for some good training. Errol immediately says that he wants to go, and Reiner agrees, saying that she needs to get actual battle experience in preparation for the Sword God Cup. Again, Errol is clueless about that, so Reiner realizes that he truly doesn't know anything. She tells him that, like the name implies, the Sword God Cup is a tournament that determines the most supreme swordsman, and it's the biggest battle in the City of Swords. Assuming he wants to participate, Lilia gives him an entry sheet and asks him to sign his name on it. Errol immediately tears the entry sheet without hesitation, leaving Reiner a little confused, since she thought he wanted to participate. Just then, he explains that it was actually a marriage certificate, so Lilia smiles innocently and says that it was just a little joke, though he doesn't take it that way. In the meantime, some mysterious mage listens to their conversation and informs Georg that it seems like they're going to the dungeon tomorrow. Georg mentions that it's very convenient, since they'll have nobody to blame but themselves if they encounter a little accident in the dungeon. The next morning, Lilia wakes up earlier than usual and heads to Errol's room, completely ready to charm him. She uses a cute pajama dress, entirely sure that once Errol sees her like that, he won't be able to stop himself from getting all sorts of feelings. Lilia leans in for a morning kiss, but Errol opens his eyes before she can do anything and asks her what she's doing on top of him. She freezes and nervously says that she doesn't mind getting down and dirty first thing in the morning. However, Errol simply grabs her head and painfully squishes her face as punishment for her behavior. Lilia cries out and complains, unable to believe he could do something so mean to a beautiful maiden like her. She doesn't understand how this isn't working on a young and eager guy like him, but Errol doesn't even listen to her and ties her up to the bed, leaving her alone. He decides to go see Reiner to ask her to collect the wild beast that's in his room right now, but finds her deeply asleep, murmuring something about her dad. Errol gently pats her head and realizes that Reiner acts like a little baby around her dad, apparently. Lilia yells from his room, asking to be released, but the one that finds her is her father, who immediately scolds her for dressing that way. Later that day, they finally go to the underground dungeon, and Errol is a little surprised, since he thought it'd look like a cave or something. There are also a lot of people around, but Reiner explains that's because the Sword God Cup is getting close, and they have the same goal as them. Lilia mentions that thanks to the teleportation seal inside, people are free to travel to any floor they want, which is very convenient. However, they can only go to levels they've already been to. Lilia can go down to the 12th level, and Reiner can go to the 14th. Errol asks if he can start on the 14th level if he goes with Reiner, but Lilia tells him that it doesn't work that way. After all, this magic will only let him go where he himself have physically been before. Errol is a little disappointed by this, since he'd really like to fight something strong right away. Lilia reassures him, saying that she'll guide him along the shortest route and they'll go straight to the lower levels. She tells Reiner that she can go off on her own in that case, though it's clear Reiner wants to go with them. Lilia reminds her that there's no need for two guides unless she has a problem with her being his guide. Reiner nervously says that she doesn't have a problem with that, so Lilia quickly tries to take Errol with her, planning to find a nice private spot to pick up where they left off this morning. Before they can go any further, Errol pulls away from her and faces Reiner, saying that he wants her to come with them. Reiner happily accepts, so the three of them head into the dungeon and find living armor monsters. Errol is glad to find a challenge so soon, so he clashes swords against the monster with no doubt. He soon realizes that this monster is fast, despite all that heavy armor, but none of these skills are out of the ordinary, so he easily cuts its head off. Despite this, the armor continues moving, so Reiner explains that they're empty suits of armor that move with the magic power of the dungeon. They can't feel pain nor have any weakness, so Errol decides that the best way to stop them is to aim for the legs. Once the living armors stop moving, Reiner clarifies that they'll start regenerating eventually and attack them again after they recover. That means they can fight them over and over again, which is perfect for sword training. Lilia sighs in relief once everything's over, saying that it was a tough fight, though Errol reminds her that she didn't do anything. She nervously explains that it was only because they were so quick, and she wasn't trying to sit it out at all. Errol decides to ask her about her class, and Lilia proudly says that she's a fencer, so she'll teach him any skill he wants to learn. Errol then remembers that the advanced class beyond fencer is his mother's class, the Sword Princess, which means Lilia is useless to him. Lilia is clearly hurt by that, so she clarifies that she just came up with something she can teach him, and it's something called having compassion. Errol and Reiner completely ignore her, but just then, they hear an adventurer's cry for help. A poor guy named Deal approaches them, completely covered in blood, and explains that he entered a new room for the first time and got hit by a really bad trap. Reiner suggests bringing him to the nearest exit, but Deal clarifies that his friends are still in that room, and he needs their help to rescue them. Reiner accepts without hesitation, but Lilia quickly stops her, asking her to think for a second before jumping into action. After all, they have to negotiate first, first, since they don't do any work without adequate compensation. The poor guy mentions how harsh that is, but Errol isn't surprised at all, even though this is coming from someone who said they would teach him compassion. Lilia insists that he has to pay the price if he's asking for help, so Deal has no other choice but to give them the money he won gambling last week. She immediately snatches the bag of money from his hands, saying that they have a deal now. However, Arel asks her if she doesn't find this situation kind of sketchy, since there's too much blood on that guy. Lilia doesn't see the issue, and explains that people bleed when their divine protection runs out, because not everyone is as sturdy as he is. The only thing she cares about right now is that they got their money, so Lilia decides to help Deal without thinking. Deal guides them through the dungeon to where his friends are, but Errol can't help but look at him suspiciously. After all, when he lost that amount of blood, he couldn't stand, much less walk, without holy water. That means his injuries are fake, but even though Errol doesn't know what he's planning, he's sure it'll be fun, so he won't call him out. The guy opens the entrance to a hidden room, but acts confused when he doesn't see his friends. Errol can't sense any danger, but Lilia immediately spots a gold coin close to a pool of blood. She doesn't hesitate to take it, and just then, a magic circle activates under their feet. Reiner warns them that it's a teleport trap, and Deal mentions that Lilia is as greedy as the rumors say. He clarifies that this is part of his job, but just then, he realizes that he fell in his own trap, since nobody told him the trap would teleport everything in the room. In a matter of seconds, the four of them find themselves in a different room with no exit. Reiner mentions that she hasn't seen a room like this before, which means they might be even lower than the 14th floor. Arl sees no sign of any strong enemies, but Deal is clearly panicking for being trapped in this situation. Lilia asks him to explain himself, but she accidentally kicks the gold coin from before, and a golden portal opens before them. Deal confesses that he was ordered to lead them all to a certain spot, so they would trigger a teleport trap that can't be escaped from, a place where advanced level sword gods lie in wait. Lilia panics after hearing that, since she thought that class was just a myth. A prismatic living armor exits the portal, and Arel immediately asks them to get down, dodging a powerful attack that destroys part of the wall and shaves the top of Deal's head. Reiner doesn't even know what that skill was, but Errol explains that it was Divine Air Slice, a sword god skill that produces slashing attacks. Before they know it, the sword god vanishes, and in less than a second, hits Errol with a direct attack, crushing him against the wall. Everyone panics, but Errol smiles and says that acquiring the gut skill was worth it, because that hardly used up any of his divine protection. The sword god vanishes again before he can counterattack, and Errol recognizes his move as the superior version of Blink Dash, Divine Step. That leaves no doubt that this is a super advanced class sword god, but he just sees it as the perfect chance to test himself. The girls get clearly confused by that, but just then, Errol also vanishes and appears right in front of the sword god, clashing swords at high speed. Lilia and Reiner are shocked to see Errol use Divine Step as well, but in less than a second, the sword god uses its divine presence to subdue everyone in the room. Their bodies instantly start feeling heavier, and all their energy is gone, but Errol is the only one who doesn't falter. He remembers the time when he was training with his mother, who used that exact same skill, and told him that it was superb that he was able to keep his stance. In the memory, Farah tells him that once he's frozen his opponent with the Divine Presence skill, he should hit them with the Infinite Break, that high-speed chopping attack. She assured him that she'd go easy on him, but Arel always knew that his mother is really bad at adjusting the strength of her attacks, so that day, he suffered a lot. However, Arel is now grateful with his mother, since he can move without a problem, despite the Divine Presence skill from the Sword God. He immediately jumps, taking his opponent off guard as he uses Infinite Break, managing to slice it into a bunch of small pieces in a second. Everyone is left speechless, and as Errol drinks holy water, Reiner asks him how he knows that Sword God skill. Lilia mentions that she's lived in this city her whole life, and she's never even seen a Sword God once. Errol casually explains that it's because his mother is a Sword God, and she was pretending to be a Sword Princess back in the village because she doesn't like the attention. After the shock, Reiner simply laughs and mentions that she probably wouldn't have challenged him if she knew he was the son of a Sword God. Errol says that keeping it a secret was the right move in that case, because their bout was something he needed to happen. That makes her feel a little nervous.
Rushed it. James up!
But Lilia interrupts them and reminds them that they have to find a way out of this place. They use a teleportation spell to exit the floor, and Lilia allows Deal to go with them, saying that Errol seemed happy that he could fight a strong opponent, so she's going to let this one pass. In the meantime, Rod is at the bar, still thinking about what Errol said earlier. However, he casually overhears the conversation of Deal's group, who are talking about how easy it was to make the Dragon Fang fall into that teleport trap. Rod immediately breaks their table with his fist and asks them what they've done to his daughter. Georg suddenly appears, saying that he has to give him some exciting news out of the kindness of his heart. Apparently, his guild members saw his daughter and her friends enter a dangerous hidden room in the dungeon. Rod instantly assumes he planned everything and asks him if it wasn't enough to take one of his arms. Georg dodges him when he tries to attack him, so Rod falls to his knees in despair, thinking that he lost his daughter. However, just then, Lilia enters the bar with Errol and Reiner, who assures them the food here is excellent. Rod immediately hugs his daughter, completely relieved to see she's alive. On the other hand, Georg is clearly confused, so Lilia explains that they managed to defeat the Sword God and make it back safely. safely. Of course, Georg doesn't believe her in the slightest, saying that they aren't strong enough to defeat sword gods. Errol calmly mentions that it was strong for sure, and Georg realizes he was the one who defeated it. Lilia then tells him that the guy that lured them into the trap fessed up to everything and said that he was the mastermind behind it. Georg tries to keep his composure and clarifies that everything happened in the dungeon, and the rules say they're responsible for their own safety in there. Rod warns him that he won't get away with this, but Georg just mocks him, saying that a drunkard like him can't do anything. Despite keeping his composure until the last second, Georg completely loses it when he returns home and instantly crashes out. After all, the crown of the strongest was finally upon his brow, but now he has to compete with some classless nobody who can defeat superclasses, and Dragonfang is going to steal his title once again. In the midst of his outburst, Georg notices a strange dark fog surrounding a mysterious sword, and a voice tells him that they'll grant his wish. A few days later, Lilia mentions that they've posted the Sword God Cup preliminary brackets for the tournament, but she and Arl are in the same block. That makes her feel devastated, because it means it'll be another year that she won't be making it to the main event. Arel is a little surprised that the Sword God Cup has preliminaries, and Reiner explains that there are too many people who want to participate, so the main tournament is made up of the winners from each preliminary block. Lilia still thinks that her Sword Cup dreams are squashed, but Errol tries to console her, saying that getting into the tournament at her skill level was already an uphill battle. On the other hand, Reiner is luckily in a different bracket, but she knows there will be tough opponents either way, and this year she is going to pass the preliminaries for sure. Arel teases her a little, saying that that will give her something to boast about to her dad. Reiner smiles, saying that her dad will definitely be happy about that. When she realizes her change in demeanor, Reiner quickly recovers her composure, saying that she's not always acting like that. That aside, Lilia tells them that the odds are against her, but she won't give up either, and that's why they're heading to the dungeon again today. Errol asks her if he has to go as well, and Lilia clarifies that they need him there to save the day if something bad were to happen. Reiner tells her that she never considers taking things into her own hands, apparently. After hearing their conversation, Rod approaches her daughter and asks her to be careful out there. Lilia agrees without problem, but Rod makes it very clear that he's talking seriously, so he asks her to keep her guard up all the time. After all, they never know when Georg might set another trap, so she must not hesitate to run away the instant she feels like she's in danger. Lilia's expression finally turns serious, so she promises to take care and leaves. Arel is simply staring at the whole scene, and Rod tells him that he knows it's a little too late for the protective father act, but he needs to pull himself together and quit being a drunk because he has to be a swordsman and a father. A while after that, it is finally the day of the Sword God Cup preliminaries, and everyone's excited to see the upcoming battles. However, Lilia loses her match sooner than she expected, and that makes her even more sad, since she really thought she'd be able to make it to the final round this year. Errol mentions that she apparently was bound to lose even if they didn't get placed in the same bracket. That comment only hurts her pride even more, so she apologizes for being a big fat loser. He tells her that it really is a shame, since he was looking forward to fighting her. Lilia asks him to stop trying to comfort her with his lies, and quickly wipes her tears herself. Leaving that aside, she tells him that the next round is the finals, and despite how strong he is, she wants him to keep his guard up. After all, his next opponent has some unique skills, so he has to be careful no matter what. Errol reminds her that he's already seen most skills in the dungeon, with all the enemies he's fought. Lilia still warns him that everything he's seen up until now were just swordsmanship skills, but his opponent has skills outside of those. Errol doesn't quite understand what she means, so Lilia explains that her class is Magic Swordsman. She enchants her sword with magic when she fights, which gives her a great advantage. Errol is a little surprised nobody has a problem with a magician entering a tournament for swordsmen, but Lilia clarifies that class doesn't matter, since the only requirement to enter is to be registered with a guild. Errol finally understands, saying that it makes sense they let him in as a classless. Their conversation is interrupted by the host, who asks the next competitors to make their way to the stage. Lilia cheers him up and says that she has her fingers crossed for him, so Errol doesn't waste any time and heads to the stage. A red-haired woman greets him, and before they start, she reminds him that Magic Swordsman is a fair and accepted class, so she doesn't want to hear any pathetic excuses like magic is unfair if he loses. Errol agrees with her, saying that the best fighter will win, and that's all there is to it. Once the match begins, the woman immediately attacks with magic fire blasts, but Errol dodges each one of them and makes his way towards her with his sword. She quickly blocks his attack with her own sword and prepares to ignite another fire blast, so Errol instantly backs up. Seeing the situation, he admits that it's very convenient how she can switch between short and long-range attacks with her sword and magic. The woman agrees, saying that there's no chance that a classless like him can beat her. Despite this, Errol tells her that at the end of the day, she's not really a master of either one. He manages to quickly get on her nerves, saying that neither her swordsmanship nor magic are up to the par with the typical advanced class. The woman prepares to launch another attack, asking him to say that after she hits him with her magic sword. With an enchantment, she turns her weapon into a flame sword, saying that it's a skill that infuses her sword with magic. She mentions that this is the ultimate blade that only magic swordsmen can use. The woman slashes her sword with no hesitation, sending dangerous flames towards Errol that move in different directions. Even the host is excited to see such a powerful attack, and while Errol dodges and blocks the flames with his sword, he admits that those erratic movements movements make it hard to tell where her attacks will come from. He knows it's a great skill, and he's starting to think that it may be the ultimate blade, once fully mastered. The woman smiles with pride at his words, but Errol easily blocks the attacks without moving from his spot and tells her that she's still not a master. This throws her off a bit, and Errol explains that if her basic swordsmanship were at least better than Lilia's, then it would have been pretty effective. Lilia complains from the stands, saying that that still comes off like an insult to her. The woman clearly isn't happy, so she asks Errol not to make fun of her because he's just a lowly, classless loser. Before she can throw another attack, Errol uses Twin Blade Slice and easily extinguishes her flame enchantment. Without letting her react, he uses Blink Dash and appears right behind her to knock her out in a second. Once she's down, Errol thanks her for showing him a great skill, saying that there are a lot of things he can only learn in the City of Swords. The host announces that the winner of the fourth block is Errol, and the public cheers for him. Meanwhile, Errol is just looking at his fallen opponent, thinking that if he does some special training, he could learn magic as well. A few days later, Lilia tells her father that they have to go to the main event to cheer Errol on. Rod asks her to go by herself since he's clearly too busy taking a nap. Lilia still insists, saying that guilds with members in the main event get seats with a great view, and they won't get a chance like this again soon. Rod still refuses to go, so Lilia teases him, asking him if he's scared he'll run into Georg. She easily gets on his nerves like that, and Rod immediately stands up, saying that Georg doesn't scare him. He explains that yesterday he held his sword and realized he's become rusty now, so it would be difficult for him to even win the Sword God Cup. The one who isn't happy about his comments now is Lilia, who pouts and tells him that he has no idea how people who can't even get into the main tournament feel at all. Rod tries to protest, but Lilia interrupts him and asks him to get ready, saying that he's coming to watch, even if she has to tie him up and drag him there. Having no other choice, Rod walks with her to the tournament, and Lilia is now smiling brightly like nothing happened. She tells him that he would have come to watch in secret anyway, and she knows it because he loves watching the guild members rise through the ranks. There's no way he would miss out on watching Reiner participate, since she's been his student for forever. Rod smiles, knowing he can't deny that, so he just tells her that she's become very much like her mother. In the meantime, Reiner is nervously waiting for the tournament to begin, and Errol decides to approach her to see if she's okay. She easily gets spooked, and asks him not to pop up in front of her face like that. He mentions that he's never seen her this restless, but Reiner reminds him that this is the biggest tournament in the city, so she can't help feeling nervous. Worse yet, in the main tournament, they don't find out who they're facing until right before the match starts, so there's no time to come up with a strategy, and that would make anybody nervous. Errol understands, saying that she's worried she'll be up against him in the first round. Reiner gets irritated and tries to hit him, asking him not to flatter himself so much. Just then, the host speaks, saying that she will now announce the competitors in their first match. First up, they have last year's champion, the Sword Emperor Georg, and his opponent is the classless Errol. After hearing that, Errol simply stands up and walks towards the stage, but Reiner suddenly stops him, holding his hand and asking him to be very careful. He smiles and says goodbye to her before heading out, and Lilia cheers him on from the stands. However, everyone is clearly shocked to see Georg's appearance, since he looks like a monster now. Rod has no idea what happened to him, but he gets highly alarmed when he sees Georg's sword, so he asks Errol to stay away from him because he's holding the worst sword imaginable. That sword has a powerful demon sealed inside of it, and it possesses anyone who wields it. Georg admits he's a little impressed, since he didn't think anyone would recognize this sword, so he must be part of the Imperial Court. Seeing that he doesn't know who he is, Rod confirms that Georg has been possessed by the demon sealed in the sword. Legend says the blade the sword god used to kill the demon was cursed with a grudge. It was supposed to be shut away under strict guard in the royal repository, so he doesn't understand why it's here. The demon in the sword speaks through Georg and tells him that the seal holding it back was broken, obviously. He waited for hundreds of years until everyone who remembered died and it became forgotten history. Eventually, he knew someone would seek his power, so all he had to do was wait for them to come and free him. The demon introduces himself as Dirgelda and says that it's time for him to enjoy wreaking some havoc. Reiner approaches the stage after hearing that name and explains that Dirgelda is a demon that was said to have been summoned by an evil deity in ancient times. Many people in the public start recognizing him as the one demon that wiped out countless people in the city. Everyone immediately runs away in panic, and Dirgelda enjoys watching the chaos, saying that the wails of fear and despair are truly music to his ears. However, it's far from enough to make up for the centuries of boredom he suffered, so he wants them to scream more and wail in despair. That's why he activates a magic circle, creating a dark barrier to prevent people from escaping. Dirgelda enjoys hearing the panicked screams and desperation, but he also notices Errol is standing in position to attack, ignoring everything else. He can't believe there's a fool here who intends to defy him after seeing seeing his supreme power, so he believes it's just a brat who has no idea he's out of his league. Arel clarifies that he only brought out his sword because he's confident he can beat him. After all, a long time ago, he got beaten by the sword god of the legend, which means he's not invincible. Durgelda simply laughs at him, saying that it's true he was slain by a sword god once. However, per the memories of this man whose body he possessed, that sword god is no longer among the living, and that means there's no one who can defeat him. Errol decides to correct him on 2 points, saying that a sword god still currently exists, and even if he's not a sword god, he can still beat him. Durgelda tells him that's absurd, but Errol suddenly launches at him with his sword to fight, using the divine step. This clearly throws the demon off, since only a sword god should have that divine skill. Durgelda asks him why he has a sword god skill, but Errol simply keeps attacking him and says that he has no reason to tell him that. Despite this, the demon reminds him that he's now in the body of the sword emperor. He jumps high in the air and immediately hits Errol with his sword, saying that it's a mere child's play. However, when the dust dissipates, Durgelda is shocked to see Errol is unharmed, and he doesn't understand why. Errol explains that he used the gut skill, and apparently his special training with Reiner was a success. Durgelda attacks out of fear, but Errol simply blocks him and decides to use infinite break, throwing infinite slashes from all directions in a matter of seconds. He manages to overwhelm the demon, who now knows this is undoubtedly the same skill as the sword god of old. This makes him wonder if this mere child is truly a sword god, but Errol tells him he's wrong because he's just a simple classless. With that declaration, Errol finishes Durgelda with one last slash, finally taking him down. The people around are still trying to process what happened, but they warn him not to get so close to that demon. Errol still approaches Durgelda to inspect his body and says that given the wounds and lack of divine protection, he can't possibly fight back now. Once this is confirmed, the public cheers, saying that he defeated the demon lord. The demon inside Georg decides it's best for him to retreat, since he won't allow anyone to seal him away again. He knows that he must focus on escaping from Errol and wait it out somewhere until he's back to full power, so his only choice is to transfer to another human to get out of there. However, he doesn't know if there's anyone here with the physique he needs to make a clean getaway. After quickly scanning the place, Durgelda spots Rod, and he immediately knows he's a good choice. Lilia tells Reiner and Errol that she's glad they're both safe, though she knows that they might have to cancel the tournament now because the stage is completely destroyed. As they speak, the sword in Georg's hand suddenly starts moving, and Arl senses the danger. Just when he glances back, the sword immediately flies towards them, so Arl gets Reiner out of the way. However, the sword suddenly moves upwards towards the stands, and Rod quickly jumps to protect his daughter. Lilia fortunately didn't get hurt, but everyone gets alarmed when they see Rod holding the sword, being possessed by Durgelda. The demon takes Lilia as a hostage to protect himself, and Arel mentions that he didn't realize the sword was his main body, so he should have attacked that magic sword instead of Georg. Durgelda laughs and tells him that it's far too late, but Arl clarifies that he only has to beat him again. However, Durgelda warns him that he has no choice but to let him go now, because if he tries to attack him, his future wife will be dead. Arl's expression darkens after hearing that, and he says that he doesn't remember her being anything of the sort. Lilia freezes, but Durgelda tells Arl that he can't deceive him since he has Rod's memory, and this girl has told him that he's her fiancé. Clearly nervous, Lilia asks him not to say that, and quickly tries to play dumb in front of Arl. Seeing the situation, Arl decides to kill them both, but Reiner quickly stops him from using infinite break against them. Durgelda asks him if he truly doesn't care about this girl, so Arl clarifies that people can't be considered hostages unless they're actually worth something. Lilia tells him that's the harshest thing he's ever said about her, and Durgelda asks her to explain herself. She quickly starts crying and apologizes, saying that Errol is not actually her future husband, and it was just wishful thinking. Durgelda clearly gets mad at her, saying that he shouldn't spare worthless trash like her, but she asks him not to kill her. Reiner and Arl simply observe the whole scene, knowing that Lilia brought this on herself. Reiner admits that she still feels bad for her, but Arl reassures her, saying that he can't kill her, no matter what he does. Durgelda asks him to explain himself, asking him if he thinks he would hesitate to kill this single puny girl. The demon assures them that he'll cut her to shreds right now, but just then, he realizes that he can't move his arm. Suddenly, Rod takes control over his body, fighting back against the demon. Arl explains that unlike what happened with Georg, Rod's body didn't change at all when he got possessed, which means he's resisting it from the inside. Durgelda asks him why he's resisting, since he knows that he desires enough power to restore himself to his former glory. Rod clarifies that he absolutely would have given in to his temptations a few days ago, but Arel reminded him of something, which is that anybody can reclaim their former glory as long as they work hard to get it done. After saying this, Rod kicks the demon out of his body and throws the sword away. Errol doesn't hesitate to use infinite break and instantly turns the sword into dust, officially defeating Durgelda. Right after the Sword God Cup, Rod decides to train the newbies that excitedly join the guild after Errol's win. He doesn't go easy on them at all, and after beating them up, he tells them that they're relying way too much on their skills, but have no defense whatsoever. Most of the newbies run away in fear, while Deal hides from Rod behind a wall, saying that he didn't know training would be this rough. Lilia finds him and scolds him for slacking off over there, and reminds him that they let him join the guild because he said he'd work hard to mend his ways, but he's not putting in any effort. Deal asks her to cut him a break, because Rod rod is being downright diabolical with his training. Lilia smiles and recognizes that her father has definitely become a more passionate trainer since getting back on his feet, and that's all thanks to Errol. When she mentions Errol, Deal asks her where he is, and Lilia awkwardly tells him that Errol has actually dropped out of the guild. Her nervous laugh quickly turns into a cry as she wonders why Errol left her behind, because they were supposed to get married. She's sad that not even Reiner is in the guild anymore, because she went chasing after Arl right away. In another scene, we see Arl on a carriage heading for his hometown, and the driver tells him that the champion of the Sword God Cup has never just disappeared right after their victory like this. Errol tells him that there was nothing left for him to see or do there, so he had no reason to stick around. Now he wants to go back home to test his skills, because he might be able to beat his mother now. The driver can't help but laugh at that, saying that even the great winner of the Sword God Cup is afraid of his mother. Later that day, we see Farah at the garden, enjoying the smell of roses, while she says that she should make a bouquet to celebrate his return. Errol, who's standing right behind her, realizes that he's been caught, even though he was trying to be stealthy. His mother looks at him with a smile and mentions that she can tell he's gotten some experience under his belt because she didn't pick up on his presence until a few moments ago. Errol tells her that he won the Sword God Cup, and Farah is proud to know he did the same as her back in the day. Before he can say anything else, Farah suddenly vanishes and appears right in front of him in less than a second, putting a rose up to his face. Arel is taken off guard and realizes that he'd be done for if that flower was a sword. He recognizes that she saw right through what he wanted to do, and Farah confirms it, reminding him that she's his mother. However, she knows that they'd destroy the house if they sparred here, so she invites him to go to the training grounds behind the mountain. Of course, Arel accepts, and once they reach the training grounds, his mother tells him that she's excited to see how strong he's become. She disappears without a warning, but Arel quickly blocks the attack with his sword. Farah mentions that she really hopes he doesn't get the impression that she's not taking this seriously. Errol sees that she used Divine Step into a direct attack, and he wouldn't have been able to block it if he hadn't seen her pull the same move in the front yard. He immediately steps back to gain some distance, knowing that he has to go on the offensive if he wants to win. Farah immediately blocks his attacks, noticing that he used a mix of the Divine Air Slice and Twin Blade Slice, which is very interesting. Arel asks her which skill she used to defend against that, but his mother tells him that she simply swung her sword. He's a little shocked to know that wasn't a skill, but Farah clarifies that she learned to fight without relying on skills from him. Arel recognizes that she's as strong as he thought and immediately launches at her again. In the meantime, the people in the village get alarmed when they notice the ruckus behind the mountain, and they immediately assume it's because of a monster. Errol and Farah continue clashing swords, even in the air, and he uses the Divine Swordsman's aerial leap to reach her. Farah uses Divine Presence to paralyze him, but Errol tells her that it won't work against him anymore. He resists the Divine Presence, so Farah decides to pull out all the stops and fight with her sword. They immediately run towards each other and use Infinite Break at the same time as their last move, ending the fight in a second. Meanwhile, Reiner arrives in the village and notices that the place looks deserted. She assumes everybody took off because of whatever caused that awful noise earlier, though it seems to have stopped now. After a while, Reiner finally finds Errol's home, but she's greeted by a young girl named Mira, who she assumes is Errol's younger sister. She introduces herself and says that she's here to see Errol, but the little girl immediately gets defensive and tells her that his brother isn't interested in cows like her. Reiner is clearly hurt by her comment, but tries to stop her from slamming the door shut in her face. Just then, Farah and Arl come back from their duel, and he's clearly surprised to see Reiner at the door. Mira quickly jumps into Arl's arms, and Reiner confirms that she's his little sister. The little girl asks them why they look so beat up, and Arel tells her that they had a match. Farah informs her that she lost, because Arel is very strong now, though he clarifies that it all came down to skill against skill, and he barely won because of the difference in physical strength. Reiner tells him that it's still amazing, because his mother is actually a sword god. Errol reminds her that his mother is not in peak form like back in her guild days, so it's not a win he wants to celebrate. Farah quickly complains about his comment and tells him that it's not like she's an old lady. That aside, she asks him when he's going to introduce her to the lovely young lady at the door, referring to Reiner. Everyone heads inside to have some tea, and Farah tells Errol that she was going to ask about his adventure in the City of Swords. However, now she would rather hear about how he and Reiner met first, because she loves a good romance story. Mira is quick to complain, saying that she doesn't want to waste time listening to that cow. Reiner still doesn't understand why the little girl keeps calling her a cow, so she starts wondering if she's really that overweight. Errol decides to finally introduce her, saying that they live together in the city. That information makes Farah feel excited, though Mira doesn't like the implication at all. Reiner immediately gets flustered, so she nervously explains that they only live together as members of the same guild. Errol then asks her what she came here for, and Reiner tells him that he couldn't just abandon the guild like that. He clarifies that he made sure to leave behind a letter of resignation, but she tells him that's not the problem, because normally someone would at least say goodbye when leaving. Errol explains that he already saw all the sword skills that could be useful, so he figured it was time to move on. Reiner just sighs in resignation, and Farah tells her that it's great that she came this far out to the sticks because she was worried about Errol. Reiner informs her that she's from this village too, and Errol isn't her only reason for being here, because she actually wanted to ask her if she'd take her on as a disciple. disciple. Just then, a man bursts into the house to warn Farah that there's an emergency because something cataclysmic happened on the west side of the mountain not too long ago. Both Farah and Errol immediately know that it's their fault, and the man explains that many trees were downed and even the ground was split apart, so he was hoping she would join the village security on their investigation. Farah knows that the match she had against her son is what caused such damage, so she tells him that there's no need for an investigation because they actually just slayed a monster over there. The man quickly buys that excuse, and Errol is impressed that she managed to explain her way out of it. The man, named Evans, tells her that he'll have to tell all the evacuees to come back in that case. He immediately notices Reiner's presence, and Farah realizes that she's Evans's daughter. Evans asks her why she's here, and Farah informs him that Reiner wants her to teach her all about how to be a good wife. Evans's eyes instantly get teary at that, as he realizes that his daughter is already getting to be that age. Reiner panics and clarifies that she never said that, and she only asked to be her disciple because she wants to learn how to fight and wants to become a better swordsman. Farah tells her that she can teach her all about how to be both a good swordsman and a good wife in that case. Evans apparently loves that idea, and he explains that back when his wife passed away, he was really worried about Reiner's future. He swore to raise her right, but he could only teach her swordsmanship, so he'd be overjoyed if she could also learn about housekeeping. Farah asks him to leave it all to her because she'll Reiner into a proper lady. Evans thanks her with tears in his eyes and then decides to return to his duties, so Reiner feels like she doesn't even get a say in this. In the meantime, Errol decides to go see his father, who's currently doing some magic research. He explains that he's on the verge of a breakthrough, and it's going to be his ultimate technique of sorts. Leaving that aside, Leon mentions that he heard Mira shouting her head off, so he wants to know if he brought back a cute girlfriend or something. Errol clarifies that she's more beautiful than cute, and his father is surprised that he really brought someone. Despite his father's excitement, Errol brushes it off and tells him that he beat his mother in a sword fight today. Leon congratulates him, and Errol tells him that he now wants him to teach him magic. His father quickly asks him to give it up, saying that it's impossible, but Errol doesn't look like he's going to give up so easily. Meanwhile, Farah is teaching Reiner how to chop vegetables into large pieces, but it's a little obvious that the redhead has never done such a thing. Both Farah and Mira get alarmed when they see the way Reiner holds the knife, and the little girl tries to warn her that's not how she should do it. Despite the warnings, feeling fully determined, Reiner tries to chop the vegetables with the knife, but ends up destroying the whole table with her strength. She quickly apologizes for the mess, and Mira cries because she also broke her favorite mug. Farah asks her if she never got a chance to cook at the guild, and Reiner admits that she always let somebody else handle it. Knowing this, Farah says that she'll have to teach her everything about housekeeping from the bottom up in that case, though Reiner would like to just stick to swordsmanship. Farah tells her that she has to refine mind, body, and skill to become the best swordsman, and she can't do that without being diligent in how she handles everyday chores. She also admits that she's quite pleased to have another daughter around the house, but Reiner asks her if she doesn't already have a daughter who's older than Arel. Farah confirms that, but explains that Astaire said that she was going to make a world that's easier for a classless like Arel to live in, and then simply left to make that true. Reiner recognizes that there are a lot of problems with discrimination against classless people, though she's not really sure Astaire should worry about a guy who's stronger than most people. Later that day, Arel helps his father to fix the table Reiner broke, but after he's done, he asks him if he couldn't just fix it with magic. Leon laughs and explains that Farah says she likes it when he smells like sawdust. He then understands that Errol simply wanted to see some magic, so he decides to use magic to fix Mira's favorite mug. While they put away the tools, Leon once again tells him that he should give up on learning magic because not every person has the mana needed to cast it. It's a special ability, like having a magic battery, so it's totally unheard of for someone without any mana or skills to be able to cast spells. Errol tells him that that doesn't mean it's impossible, and Leon admits that it's true, and he knows he already set a new precedent by winning the Sword God Cup without having a class. However, these old swords he left are proof that he's a hard worker, and some things in life are just unachievable even with hard work. Errol is a little surprised that they didn't throw them away, and Leon explains that these swords are like a monument to all his efforts, so it wouldn't sit right with him to throw them or repair them. Even so, trying to cast magic without the mana is like being an armless swordsman who can't hold a blade and has to learn by watching moves while blindfolded, so no amount of hard work will help. Errol admits that he has a point, but he asks him how he's so sure that he doesn't have mana. Leon tells him that if he did, he would have gotten the magician class through a blessing and started casting spells a long time ago. Errol still assures him that he has mana, and it's something he just knows. He explains that it happened when he was getting beat up by Reiner every day back in the guild. To restore his divine protection after he got hurt, he needed to drink holy water, but Lilia offered him some medicine that was laying around the warehouse and asked him to use it for recovery first. Reiner was reluctant at first and asked her what that medicine was, but Lilia simply said that she had no idea, assuming that it'd be old holy water or something, though it could also be poison. However, Arel thought that drinking poison might help him toughen up his internal organs, so he drank the medicine without thinking. Leon scolds him for drinking suspicious stuff, but Arel tells him that the problem is that it wasn't actually poison. It felt like he recovered something when he drank it, but it wasn't the divine protection from the goddess. Leon quickly understands that it's possible that it was mana mana he recovered, and if that's the case, then he could teach him magic. Errol notices how happy he is about that, and his father confesses that he's always been jealous of Farah getting to teach him swordsmanship. He asks him if he can still feel the sensation of that mana he recovered inside of him, wanting to know if he can make it move throughout his body. Errol closes his eyes to focus, and Leon asks him to try to release it, and to imagine condensing it to a single point in the palm of his hand. Errol decides to give it a shot, and after a while, a tiny flash of light appears in his hand. Leon gets very excited, because that's unmistakable proof that he has mana, but Errol faints right after that, which means he's used it all up with just that. His father quickly catches him and tells him that he may be a champion when it comes to swords, but in terms of mana, he's not even at the level of a trainee yet. He'll need a much larger pool of mana than he currently has to start using magic without passing out. Errol asks him how he can increase it, and Leon tells him it's the same as practicing with his sword. It's just like how they train their bodies to increase muscle mass, so he has to use his mana over and over again to improve. Errol is glad to hear it's really that simple, but he completely passes out after that. Leon then confesses that he never really wanted to tell him to give up, because he's always dug in his heels and proved that nothing is impossible with effort. He quickly starts tearing up, saying that he's truly the best son he could have asked for. Once Errol finally recovers, he goes to a store and buys all of the mana potions available. He trains his magic non-stop every day, and after 6 months, Leon is impressed to see his progress. After all, now he has the same amount of mana as a spellcaster right after their blessing. Errol assumes that means he'll be able to invoke magic now, but Leon tells him there's still one tricky issue left to deal with. He shows him a text called a Magiscript and explains that in order to use magic, he needs to know spells that are written Magiscript. With the right skill, the spells that he needs to cast magic can pop into his mind almost automatically. Since he doesn't have skills, it means he has to form and recite the spell in his head every time. It might be impossible for him to get help from the academy in the City of Magic. Leon explains that they teach all the basics of magic there, but he'll have to train enough to reach the level needed for entry first. Errol is clearly interested in that, so he asks his father to tell him everything about it. They have dinner in family soon after that, and Farah mentions that Reiner has gotten so much better, both in the kitchen and with the sword. Errol notices that his mother has really taken a liking to Reiner, and Leon says that he likes her too, because she's valiant and beautiful. Reiner is happy to see Errol's family gets along so well, and mentions that maybe hers would be the same way if her mother was still alive. Leon tells Farah that he'd do anything for her, and then uses a spell to cast a heart that transforms into glowing birds. Everyone is amazed to see the beautiful magic, and with that, Errol decides that he's going to become much stronger. After a time skip, we see Reiner serving tea to Farah, wanting to see the results of her training. 3 years have passed since she started training at Errol's house, and just now Farah approves the tea she prepared, saying that she's become quite good at making tea. Reiner smiles happily and thanks her, saying that it's all because she's been such a great teacher. The joyful moment is interrupted when Mira suddenly starts crying and comes out of Arl's room with a piece of paper. With tears in her eyes, she explains that when she went to wake Arl up, the only thing she found was a note. Reiner immediately checks the note, which has a single sentence from Arl saying that he's off to the City of Magic. Mira sobs uncontrollably, saying that her brother left again without saying a word. Farah quickly comforts her and tells her that no matter how excited Errol was about the City of Magic, he should have at least said goodbye. Reiner's expression turns sad as she admits that she's pulled similar stunts in the past, but she didn't realize how much it hurts to get left behind. Farah suddenly hugs her, saying that she can't leave them behind like that. Reiner hugs her back and agrees, telling her that she won't leave because there are still things left for her to learn. When Farah thinks about it, she can't believe that both Astaire and Errol just left like that, and it makes her think her family is a little too free-spirited. Just as she's wondering who they got it from, Leon enters the room with a yawn, completely clueless, and the answer is more than clear. In another scene, we see Errol in a carriage headed to the City of Magic, and the driver tells him that it'll take about 2 days until they get there. Seeing Errol now, he mentions that he sure has changed because he did big things in the City of Swords 3 years ago, but right after, he returned to his hometown in the Sticks, and now he's headed to the City of Magic. Kaido, one of the kids in the carriage, asks him if he's planning to go to the Institute of Magic as well. Arel confirms that, but the kid straight up tells him that's weird because he's way older than they are, so it's kind of late for him to enter the Institute. A blue-haired girl named Kufa asks Kaido to stop, saying that Errol has clearly been failing the entrance exam over and over. Errol tries to clarify things, but the driver can't help but laugh. Kufa says that they can't make fun of people who are striving to overcome their shortcomings. Kaido gets defensive and tells her that even though she's trying to stick up for Errol, she just dissed him way harder than he did. The two of them start arguing over it, but a green-haired girl named Colette nervously asks them to stop fighting. Kaido simply asks her to shut up, saying that he'd never waste his time fighting a loser like Kufa. During their banter, Errol wonders if they're all spellcasters, because if they are, it means they must have recently gotten their blessings. Kaido decides to ask him what kind of magic is his specialty, saying that his is red magic. Errol thinks about it and remembers what his father told him about the different types of magic. Black magic is darkness and death-related magic, and white magic is light and life-related magic. Yellow magic is earth and metal-related magic. green is air and weather-related magic, while blue is water, ice, and cold-related magic. Lastly, Kaido's specialty, red magic, is fire and heat-related magic. Leon explained that the magic type people can acquire differs depending on the person. However, in Errol's case, he isn't confined to just one, so he tried out all of the ones his father knew. With this in mind, he tells Kaido that he doesn't have one, because he's classless after all. This clearly throws him off, but Kufa laughs and tells Kaido that Arl is obviously teasing him. After all, someone without a class would never bother trying to get into the Institute of Magic. Kaido quickly gets angry at that, so he tells Arl that that wasn't even a funny joke. Arl clarifies that he's not joking, and to prove it, he shows them his class ID. The kids are shocked to see it is actually true, and Colette even mentions that it's the first time she sees a classless ID. Kaido now speaks with a mocking tone, asking Arl if he's seriously going to learn magic as a classless. He tells him that he must be out of his mind to do something like that, but Arl just mentions that this situation feels quite familiar. Just then, the carriage abruptly stops at the sound of a loud growl coming from the woods. Arl calmly says that it sounded like a male troll king, and it must have roared at them from somewhere in the forest. Kaido quickly gets alarmed, saying that those things are super strong, so they have to get out of there as soon as possible. However, the driver informs them that his horses have fainted, so they can't move from where they are. Colette immediately starts panicking, saying that they're going to die, but Kufa tries to calm her down and reminds her that a troll is just a troll, so they surely can do something about it. Kaido agrees, saying that trolls are huge and they move slow, so they can hit it with their attacks. Kufa says that they might be able to take it down if they work together, so they decide to act as a team to use all their power to beat the Troll King. After a few seconds, a giant troll appears before them, and Colette instantly freaks out. Kaido reassures her, saying that they can take it, despite how huge it is. However, as the troll approaches them, the real Troll King easily swats it away, and the kids panic when they see how ginormous it truly is. The girls shake in fear, saying that they can't do it, and Kaido admits that they're no match for that thing. Despite this, he gathers the courage to face the Troll King, saying that there's no way he's just gonna lose without even trying. He tries to do some kind of damage by using all his mana to cast a strong fireball. Unfortunately, this doesn't cause any damage on the Troll King, and it just makes it mad. Kaido panics now that he's out of mana, but as he cries, the Troll King suddenly vanishes before his eyes with a powerful explosion. This leaves them highly confused, because the troll just suddenly turned to ash without doing anything. Just then, Errol admits that he should have held back a bit, because that was definitely an overkill. Kaido realizes that he's the one who cast that spell just now, and Colette mentions that explosion is supreme level red magic, and that's the kind of magic a mage uses. While they try to process the whole situation, Arl decides to use magic on the horses, helping them quickly recover. The driver thanks him, saying that he's saved his hide once again, but Errol tells him that he'd like to see what he can do next time. Kaido quickly approaches Errol to apologize for how rude he was, saying that he had no idea he was a great master. Errol clarifies that he's not a master, but Kaido insists, saying that he wants to learn from him to become an amazing wizard like him. Errol shows him his classless ID again, but none of the kids believe him now, and Kufa even claims that his document must be fake. Colette assumes that he's got some reason to hide who he truly is, and that makes Kaido think that he's even cooler than he thought. Errol tries to clarify he's truly classless, but this is clearly useless, so the driver just holds his laugh and tells them that they're off to the City of Magic. After 2 days, Kaido excitedly tells Errol that in the middle of the lake is Arsbel, the City of Magic. Once in the city, Kaido runs around Errol and tells him that he heard they maintain the bridge with magic, which really suits the City of Magic. Both Kufa and Colette are just terrified to see the usually cocky Kaido is now acting like a tamed puppy. That's a serious shock to see, no matter how impressive Errol and his magic are. The girls assume he cast a spell on Kaido to make him act that way, so they decide to fall back and watch them to confirm. Errol already knows there's a troublesome misunderstanding going on, but there's nothing he can do about it now. Kaido asks him if he's taking the entrance exam for red magic, but Arel didn't even know the institute is divided based on the magic. Kaido explains that the magiscript, vocabulary, and grammar are different based on the type of magic. Kufa mentions that she'll be in the School of Blue Magic, and Colette says that she'll be in the green one, though she's really nervous. Kaido asks her to make sure she doesn't bomb the test, or else she'll get sent right back to the sticks. Kufa immediately warns him that the same goes for him, trying to stick up for Colette. Arel is just thinking about the entrance exams, saying that he hopes they don't reject him outright like in the City of Swords. He decides to go with Kaido to take the red magic entrance exam and heads to the reception desk to fill out and submit his application. Despite his concerns, the receptionist approves his application even after seeing he's classless, saying that he has the right to take the test, no matter his class. Arel is a little shocked because this place is completely different from the City of Swords. Kaido takes him to the testing grounds, saying that he'll pass in one go for sure. A kid passes the exam after casting a simple fireball against an armor, but even though he's really happy about it, a blonde kid just laughs at him, saying that everyone's doing that basic fireball, which is beyond pathetic. The supervisor is surprised to see this blonde kid is already an advanced class mage at his age. Errol asks if that's impressive, and Kaido tells him that only a real prodigy can get blessed with an advanced class right away, which means he can sail straight into the elite course. Despite how amazing that sounds, Errol just remembers his father and thinks that even people like that can end up as little old men in the countryside. The blonde kid asks the instructor if he can destroy the target with his flames, and after getting permission, he casts a powerful eruption spell. Kaido is shocked to see that pillar of fire, but he says that it's still nothing compared to his master. The student is clearly annoyed at that comment, so he asks him if his master is on the same level as him. Kaido affirms that, but before he starts bragging, Arl stops him with a hit on the head. The kid laughs and says that his master apparently knows true talent when he sees it, because mere spellcasters just getting their start could never melt metal with flames like he did. Ariel just asks him to turn around and take a good look, and the kid soon realizes that the metal of the armor didn't melt with his eruption spell. The instructor explains that it's a mithril target created by the Yellow Magic School, so it won't melt so easily. The other students are surprised to learn this, because mithril is a material that's harder than any mineral. Kaido takes the opportunity to laugh at the blonde kid, saying that all that smug attitude came back to bite him. Just as he's about to brag about his master again, Arel hits him again and asks him to keep him out of it. Once it's his turn, the kid clarifies that he expects something impressive after hearing all that bragging about his skill. Arel reminds him that he didn't say anything, and after hitting Kaido's head again, he steps forward to use his magic. This is the first time he's casting magic on mithril, and since he may not get this chance again, he decides to give it all he's got. Arel uses eruption to hit the head of the target, but the attack looks so small that it leaves everyone confused. The blonde kid quickly laughs, saying that he only made a skinny little fire column that lasted for a second, which is even more pathetic. He assumes that's all there is to see, but Kaido knows that his master would never screw up. Just as he says that, the mithril armor completely melts in a second, and everyone's shocked to see it. The blonde kid immediately assumes he cheated, because eruption can't melt mithril. Arel agrees, and clarifies that he didn't use a proper eruption skill, but a technique that he honed himself by compressing the scope and ignition time of the flame. The kid can't believe he made his own magic, but Kaido is just proud of his master, saying that he'll prove himself worthy as his pupil. Arel just leaves, and informs him that he's going to the next testing site. There he finds Kufa, who passes the entrance exam after casting a water ball. She's clearly confused to see him there, but Arel doesn't give her an explanation, and simply casts an ice edge spell, completely destroying another mithril armor. Without saying anything, he heads to the green magic school, but he finds Colette crying outside. She explains that she's so nervous she can't even move her legs, and she hasn't even finished registering. Colette admits that she's totally helpless when her nerves get the better of her, and her friends have been helping her up until now, but she has to take the exam on her own. She asks him how he deals with things when he's nervous, but Arel realizes that he's never really been nervous before, although there have been times when he wasn't able to move his body like normal. Colette explains that people usually get nervous when they're afraid they might screw up. Arel asks her if she has gone her entire life without ever screwing up even once, but Colette tells him it's quite the opposite, because she's always messing up, so she wants to avoid that. He clearly doesn't understand, and says that he's no different since he messes up and loses all the time, so he doesn't know why that scares her so much. It's clear Colette also doesn't understand him, so Arel tells her that generally speaking, nobody's life gets ruined over a single screw-up. This is just an entrance exam, so it can't kill her or anything, even if she fails. Colette is left speechless for a moment at his logic, but she realizes that he's right, and since messing up won't cost her her life, she can always try again. Once she understands this, she thanks Arel and tells him that she will try her best. Arel is glad to hear that, and asks her how the green school entrance exam works. Colette explains that it's really simple since he just has to make a windmill on the training ground spin with magic. With this in mind, Arel heads to the training grounds with her, and uses a tornado spell that ends up destroying the windmill entirely. All the students are shocked after that demonstration, and Colette can't believe he just tore the windmill to pieces like that. Just then, Arel realizes the windmill was made of wood instead of mithril, so he used too much power. The instructor nervously tells him that he passed, but warns the next person to aim one windmill over. Colette is terrified that she has to go after that amazing display of magic, but Arel gives her a reassuring gaze. She immediately remembers his words, knowing that nobody's life gets ruined over a single screw-up. That gives her the courage to try her best, so she uses magic to make the windmill spin. In the meantime, Arel goes to all the other schools to do the entrance exams in no time. He successfully passes both yellow and white magic entrance exams, so now all that's left is the black magic school. The facilities of the black magic school look clearly deteriorated from the outside, but Arel doesn't even notice that and simply heads inside, ignoring how run down everything is. He admits that it looks like an abandoned building and notices a box with a strange creature inside. As he wonders what that could possibly be, the sudden scream of a girl makes him flinch. The girl, who's apparently a student of the black magic school, stumbles towards him and desperately searches for something. She freaks out and asks him if he's seen Gui, saying that Gui has gone missing. A little disturbed, Arel assumes she means the creature in the box, so he tells her that he heard something coming from it. The girl immediately gets the creature out of the box and sighs in relief, explaining that it's a chimera that she made herself. Arel laughs awkwardly at that when a skeleton suddenly touches his shoulder, saying that he's an unfamiliar face. The skeleton welcomes him to the school of black magic, but Arel immediately beheads it with his sword without a doubt. The skeleton quickly picks up its head and complains about how mean he is, asking why anyone would just suddenly behead a lady. Arel asks her if she's an undead monster, but the skeleton just tells him that her name is Latalia and she's just a beautiful beautiful office clerk. Ignoring the fact that she's a skeleton, Errol asks her, where's the entrance exam for the black magic school? However, Latalia clarifies there's no entrance exam here because there's never been many students who want to learn black magic, and that's why everyone is welcome. Errol truly thinks that they should be a little more selective, but seeing the girl from before, it's clear that they really do welcome everyone. After registering, Kaido, Kufa, and Colette find him in the city, and the three of them ask him which school he's going to. Errol clarifies that he's not going to pick one, because he'll simply attend all of them. Kaido warns him that it's crazy to go to 3 schools at once, no matter how good at magic he is. However, Errol leaves them even more shocked when he tells them that he's actually going to attend all 6 schools at once, including red, blue, green, yellow, white, and black. None of the kids can believe something like that, but a few days later, Errol shows them that he got student IDs for all the schools, which means he got accepted to all of them. Kufa asks him if no one said anything, but Errol tells her that apparently student information isn't shared between the schools. He got ID and paperwork for all of them anyway, so there shouldn't be a problem. Despite this, as soon as Errol checks the paperwork, he notices that there is indeed a problem, because the school schedules overlap. Kaido complains and tells him that's why he said that attending all 6 schools at once is impossible. However, Errol mentions that attendance is only 20% of the grade, and the majority of the grade is focused on exams, apparently, which means he'll be okay if his score is high on those. Colette tells him that it makes no sense to take the exam without attending the class, because the most recent information isn't written in textbooks. To learn the ins and outs, he has to write down explanations that the teacher gives during class. With that in mind, Errol asks them if he can borrow their notes, and the kids agree without a doubt, very willing to help him. That's 3 classes taken care of, so Errol thanks them for that, but they still ask him what he'll do about the other schools. He tells them that the black magic school won't be a problem, because the office clerk gave him a totally blank curriculum and said that they don't have any classes in the School of Black Magic. From what he's heard, all the classes are self-study, so all that's left is the yellow and white schools. But he supposes it should work out if he focuses on attending those 2. Kaido agrees, but asks him to go to the Red School of Magic together for his first class. Errol accepts and goes to the Red School of Magic with Kaido, but the first student they run into is Royce, the blonde kid from before. Kaido recognizes him as the sore loser from the exams, but Royce claims that it must have been a fluke, because there's no way a mage such as himself could be inferior to a spellcaster. Errol clarifies that he's not a spellcaster, and Royce says that that explains a lot, because it makes sense he'd be a mage at his age, regardless of the fact he's a new student. Errol tells him that he's not a mage either, so Royce's expression turns terrified as he assumes that he's a supreme class archmage. However, Errol makes it clear that he's not an archmage either, which only confuses him more. Just before the class starts, Royce asks the teacher what is Errol's class, because he's the only one who used eruption at the exam aside from him. The teacher checks the information he has and tells him that Errol is classless. Royce freezes in shock, trying to process the information, but Kaido simply tells him that he'll get used to it eventually. Once that's clear, the teacher decides to start with the class and asks everyone to open their textbooks. Just a few minutes after the class starts, Kaido's eye is twitching as he tries to understand the great amount of magiscript written on the blackboard. The script by itself is hard, but adding vocabulary and spells on top of it makes it almost impossible for him. On the other hand, Errol wasn't expecting to start with the most basic of the basics. Those that were blessed as spellcasters should already have magiscript in their minds, and yet they start class by making them study it from scratch. The teacher decides to speak and says that he imagines there's a fair number of them who haven't totally memorized magiscript or its grammar. The reason they can use magic without fully knowing magiscript is thanks to their skills. However, by having a thorough understanding of spells, they can use magic more smoothly, and it will help them determine the most suitable skills for casting spells and make more efficient use of their mana. In other words, it reduces the physical strain on their bodies, and when they reach higher proficiency, they can even rearrange spells to cast ones more powerful than basic skills. Kaido asks Errol if that's what he did, but Errol tells him that he didn't know it was such an advanced technique because his father mixed and matched spells every day like they were a puzzle. Sometime after that class, even though Errol gave attending class a shot, none of the schools really offered him anything new. However, the Green School of Magic is pretty interesting, especially since the practical training they have to do for flight magic is something he's never done before. Colette is surprised to hear that because he can already use advanced class magic. Errol just tells her that he had a special upbringing, but in truth, when he asked his father to teach him, Leon just panicked and told him he can't do heights, so anything concerning flight magic was banned from his house. The teacher announces that they're going to start practicing flight magic, so she wants them to imagine themselves riding an upward current of air. She starts flying as a demonstration and tells them that they can also spread their hands and imagine they're a bird. Errol follows the instructions, but he says that this method assumes they already have flight skill. However, the spell won't come to his mind no matter how hard he imagines it, so he doesn't know what to do. His train of thought is interrupted when he notices that Colette has managed to use flight. He's surprised to see her floating so easily, but she suddenly loses balance and falls on her back. Colette's face turns red in embarrassment as soon as she notices everyone saw her fall, but she quickly gets on her feet and clarifies that she's not afraid to screw up anymore. Errol is just impressed that she got to floating pretty quickly, and it looks like she'll improve if she practices. He knows that he has to do the same, so he tries imagining explaining what the teacher said. If writing an updraft is how they imagine it, then maybe he should cast the tornado spell at his feet. Once he tries that, Errol is quickly sent flying high into the sky, but he messes up and crashes into the ground. Colette immediately helps him up, and Errol thanks her, but another student approaches them to mock them, saying that they're terrible. He decides to show them how it's done, and easily launches himself into the air using flight magic. The green-haired student smoothly flies around with ease and then safely lands, saying that he's studied nothing but flight magic ever since he became a spellcaster, and he's won every race. Errol doesn't know what he's talking about. So Colette explains that it's a sport that uses flight magic. People compete by flying around a set course to see who can reach the goal the fastest. Errol admits that it sounds pretty fun, so he decides that he wants to race too. The green-haired student reminds him that it's a flight race, so he has to fly in order to participate. Errol just tells him that he'll learn to fly with practice, obviously, but the student clarifies that the next race is in 2 months, and while anybody can learn to float on their first day, it takes at least 6 months to learn how to fly, so he should forget about the next race and focus on racing him in a year. Errol completely ignores his words and focuses on the way he's flying, saying that if he pieces together a spell similar to that wind gust and then mix it with another one, he could probably manage to do it. Colette asks him if he wants to save the racing until next year, but Errol tells her that 2 months is enough for him. Colette is not surprised by that this time, since she already knew Errol would say something like that. That night, Kaido is walking through the halls of the school at night, and he asks the girls why they came back to school again. Colette apologizes and explains that she forgot something, but he tells her that it's easy to get lost in the dark. However, he also mentions that they could have gone on their own anyway. Colette nervously explains that Kufa said they should bring him along, and Kufa clarifies it's for extra protection. Some rumors have been spreading around, and everyone knows that it's better to go in big groups. Kaido doesn't know what rumors they're talking about, so Kufa decides to tease him a little, saying that it shows up on the school grounds almost every day. Kaido immediately covers his ears, not wanting to listen anymore, but Kufa makes fun of him for being afraid of ghosts. She mentions that this brings back memories of all the times he was too scared to go to the bathroom by himself, and makes it even funnier. Kaido quickly tells her that she doesn't have to bring those old stories up right now, and reminds her that she's the one who's been hiding behind Colette this whole time. Kufa nervously explains that she was just making sure Colette's back is covered, but that's an obvious lie. Colette asks them to stop fighting, because it might notice them if they're too loud. As soon as she says that, both Kufa and Kaido look at her and scream in horror when they see it right behind her. The window suddenly opens, but Colette's scream is silenced by a mysterious hooded person. Everyone's fear quickly dies down as soon as they realize it's actually just Errol, who asks them what they're doing here. Of course, Kufa tells him that they could ask him the same thing, and Colette asks him what he's doing out here so late. Errol points to his feet, and she immediately notices that he's using flight magic. He explains that he's been training around here every night since the day he decided to take part in the race. Kufa sighs in relief, saying that all those rumors about ghosts were just because of him, so there's nothing to fear anymore. Kaido worries a little because he's going to exhaust himself that way, but Errol reassures him and says that it's fine because he makes sure that he gets plenty of rest, and in fact, he was sleeping just now. This piece of information leaves them all confused, and just to make sure, Kaido asks him if he was invoking flight magic while sleeping. Errol confirms this, saying that not doing anything while sleeping is such a waste of time, so he trained himself to practice even while asleep. He strengthens his mana while resting up, so it's really killing two birds with one stone. Kufa quickly accuses him and says that he's definitely not resting properly that way, but he just tells her that she should give it a try. Of course, she instantly refuses and sighs, saying that she feels like they've seen something weirder than a ghost. On the other hand, Kaido says that he thought that he'd get stronger just by making it to magic school, but he was clearly wrong. Now that he knows that, he tells Errol that he'll never reach his level, but he wants to start practicing on his own, and he wants to master the magic that he's good at the very least. Errol tells him that he needs to learn to conquer his fear of ghosts first, but Kaido nervously exclaims that he isn't afraid of them. Kufa clarifies that she's not trying to copy Kaido, but she will work hard to practice on her own too. Colette agrees, saying that she'll also work even harder than before now. After saying goodbye to them, Errol finds himself wide awake now, so he wonders what he should do. After giving it some thought, he decides to visit Latalia in the black magic school, and she's clearly excited to see him. Errol clarifies he just came for permission to enter the library, and despite her disappointment, she gives him a pass and asks him what kind of book he's looking for. He tells her that he's not looking for anything in particular, but he's just been reading through all the books he doesn't have at home, one by one. The books here are packed with useful information, and better yet, it's a perfect change of pace. Latalia tells him that's funny, considering some people get sick at the mere sight of black magic books. Sometime after that, during a class at the Red School of Magic, Errol interrupts the teacher and tells him that the third line of the spell he wrote on the blackboard is wrong. The teacher recognizes his mistake and decides to rewrite it, and Kaido tells Errol that was a great catch. Errol tells him that spells don't automatically appear in his mind, so he has no choice but to memorize them. Kaido can't believe he memorized that entire thing, but Errol clarifies that he came up with shorthand versions for the longer ones, which helps him remember more spells overall. For example, he's cut down by about a third the spell written on the board right now. The teacher manages to hear that and admits that it's quite interesting interesting, so he asks him to write that spell on the board. Errol accepts and writes the version of his spell, and Kaido is shocked to see he can really shorten it that much. The teacher admits that it should get the desired results theoretically, but there are no safeguards whatsoever, so this could result in an explosion if the spell goes wrong. Kaido has no idea what they're even talking about now, but Errol tells the teacher that he doesn't need safeguards if he has divine protection. The teacher reminds him that it doesn't make it any less painful, but Errol says that it's fine as long as he doesn't die. The teacher admits that he seems to have a complete understanding of spells, so he asks him if he wants to try a promotion exam to move up to the 2nd grade. Royce immediately stands up after hearing that and asks him to let him take that test as well. Soon after that, both Errol and Royce follow the teacher to begin with the promotion exam. They have no idea about the place they're seeing and can only see some iron bars down at the end of the area. The teacher explains that there are monsters held behind those bars and they are part of the test. Once they enter their lane, the gate will open to release a monster, and if they can beat them with magic without letting them get close, then they pass the exam. The monsters will attack them if they get close enough, so they have to be careful. Royce decides to go first, so the teacher gives the order to open the gate and a huge minotaur is released. The monster soon runs straight towards Royce, so he immediately casts eruption against it. His first attack misses though, but Errol mentions that his magic is more powerful than it was at the entrance exam, so he wonders if he tweaked the spell. The teacher confirms this, saying that it's the product of his classwork, but even so, eruption is a spell meant to strike at a precise spot the caster predetermines, so it's not suitable for a moving target. Plus, Royce is under the stress of having a monster rushing at him, and his shots are getting wilder and wilder. After a lot of failed attempts, Royce realizes that the minotaur has already reached him, and there's nothing he can do about it. However, just before the monster attacks, it completely disappears, and the teacher laughs, reminding him that this is school, so there's no way they would let him get hurt. Errol is seemingly amused, saying that he surely enjoys fracking students out every year. Royce is still processing the fact that he couldn't hit the monster at all, and the teacher tells him that students typically have to study for 2 years before taking this test, so just getting this far is good enough. If he thinks about it, that means in 2 years they will all be strong enough to beat a minotaur. Royce only understands the fact that he's worse than everyone in their 2nd year, and he can't help but cry out of frustration at the thought. Since he's the teacher, he should know what level he's at, so he wonders why he let him take this promotion exam. Just then, Royce realizes that he was trying to make him aware of his own level. Royce quickly wipes his tears and says that he understands his shortcomings as a mage now, so he will continue to humbly improve through study. The teacher smiles and tells him that he's looking forward to it, and then asks Errol to get ready in the next lane over. He tells him that they've prepared a monster from the same species to attack him, so he'll be doing the same thing as Royce. Once the gate opens, a huge minotaur is released, and Errol wonders if it's really the same species, because it looks much bigger and darker than the other one. A girl suddenly runs up to the teacher and informs him that there has been a mistake, and a superior minotaur got mixed in with the ones for the exam. Errol still continues with the exam and casts 2 flame spears, which are less powerful than an eruption spell, but easier to strike with. He uses fire lance and shoots directly towards the minotaur's legs, but the monster easily jumps to dodge it. With that, the teacher confirms that this is indeed a superior class minotaur, so they're in trouble now. There's a trap in place to protect the students from being attacked, but this one might be able to break through it. He asks Errol to get out of the lane, saying that he's going to stop it because it can dodge magical attacks from the front. Errol tells him that's not a problem, and the fire spears he cast before suddenly make a turn, hitting the minotaur from behind. To finish it, he uses eruption to hit the minotaur right in the center, and the monster quickly turns into ashes. The teacher is more than shocked because they only use superior class minotaurs against elite students who are the very top of their class. It's unbelievable that Errol would have the strength and skill necessary to defeat it so perfectly, and his magic is too powerful for a classless, so there must be some kind of mistake with his assessment. That aside, he informs Errol that he's passed the promotion exam, so he has to show up to the 2nd grade class starting tomorrow. Later that day, Kaido is very proud to know he passed the promotion exam, but Colette tells Errol that he looks pretty glum for someone who just skipped a grade. Errol explains that the promotion exam he took was a special exception, because normally it can only be taken once a year at the end of the semester, except for when a student is recommended by the staff. His instructor at the red school made the offer to recommend him, but he can't expect the same to happen elsewhere. Kufa asks him if he wants to take the promotion exam at the blue school too, but Errol corrects her, saying that he wants to take it in all the schools, not just blue. This shocks her a little, but Kufa knows that he's just going to keep doing crazy things, so she should learn to just expect the unexpected from now on. In another scene, we see Reiner trying to cook without getting burned while Farah supervises her. After a little burn, Reiner doesn't give up and throws a fish in a pan, though she panics a little when it starts sizzling. Seeing her hesitation and slight panic, Mira gets a little impatient and asks if lunch is ready yet because she's starving. Reiner apologizes, but Farah asks Mira not to rush her and reminds her that her older brother got stronger by repeating what he messed up over and over, just like Reiner is doing. Mira immediately says that her big brother is not like that cow lady, and Reiner agrees, saying that Arl puts himself through much harsher training than she does, and he's probably even training now. Back to the City of Magic, we see Errol and Kufa following Hengel, an instructor of the Blue School of Magic. He tries asking her to let him take take the promotion exam, but Hengel finds the idea ridiculous and reminds him that they only hold that exam once a year. Errol tells her that he knows that information, but he also knows that if the instructor approves, it can be taken under special circumstances. Hengel clarifies that that only applies to exemplary students, so he asks her to look at his blue magic. The instructor is clearly tired of his insistence, so she tells him that she'll agree to consider it, but only if he starts seriously attending class. Errol tells her that that's the exact opposite of what he needs, because the reason he wants to take the promotion exam is to avoid attending superfluous classes. Hengel immediately takes that as an offense, clearly hurt that he called her classes superfluous. Errol clarifies that they just don't suit his current level, but Hengel is even more offended by that, so she tells him that she'll be the judge of that, and it's time to see if he's truly up to taking the promotion exam or not. The two of them go to a training field soon after, and Kufa observes them from a safe distance, still a little worried. After all, she knows that Instructor Hengel is basically one step away from becoming an Archmage, one of the supreme classes, so she doesn't know what Arl was thinking, pissing off someone that's skilled. While Errol warms up, Hengel informs him that the rules are the same as a standard mock battle. No physical attacks are allowed, and he has to use magic to extinguish all of her divine protection to win. She also warns him that she doesn't want to hear any whining if he ends up hurt. Errol assures her that won't be a problem, because she'll let him take the promotion exam once he wins. Hengel can't believe the amount of confidence he has, and she asks him if he really thinks he can win against a seasoned teacher like her. He clarifies that he can't know that unless he tries, but he thinks he may be able to do it. Hengel's expression darkens as soon as she hears that, and she says that his confidence is even more misplaced than she thought. Wanting to see him back it up, she quickly casts a powerful ice storm, and even Kufa is affected by it because it's so cold that it hurts to breathe. She worries when she sees Arl trapped in the ice, and Hengel can't believe that he couldn't even avoid one attack, despite all his bragging. Hengel tells Kufa that the key to winning mock battles is by unleashing powerful spells as soon as the battle begins. As soon as she says that, Errol's fist suddenly destroys the ice, taking her by surprise. Hengel is shocked to see Errol was protected by an ice shield he cast himself, because he acted fast enough to defend against her surprise attack. She admits that he must be fairly quick at putting spells together, which is really impressive. Errol simply says that it is now his turn, and with a snap of his fingers, he casts several ice edges. Hengel is not very impressed that he's starting with a basic skill, because she truly expected more. Just when she says that, Errol multiplies the number of ice shards, and Hengel admits that's not bad for a new student. Kufa can't even believe what she's witnessing, because she can hardly do two at once. Arl doesn't waste any time and attacks, but Hengel counters the ice shards with the same spell. He mentions that he shouldn't be surprised an instructor is so skilled, and just then, Hengel remembers that he used this spell in his entrance exam, so she assumes it's one of his specialties. Despite that, she warns him that it's her specialty as well, so he can't win with that spell. Errol decides to test that out, and casts Ice Edge again, but this time, it's twice as many as before. Hengel is not impressed at all, so she does the same, saying that she could easily make about 100 of these. Kufa freaks out a little when she sees how things are rapidly escalating, but there's nothing she can possibly do about it. After hearing what Hengel said, Arl decides to add more, casting 100 ice shards on the right, another 100 on the left, and also 100 more behind her. Hengel is completely taken off guard, because multiplying the ice shards is simple, but changing their emergence point requires a fairly complicated spell. She knows that her Ice Edge can't counter all of this, so as soon as Errol fires his attack, she instantly casts an ice shield around her to protect her. Even this way, she can tell that the ice shards are striking hard against the shield. The ice shards should get weaker the more he multiplies them, but these are just as strong as before. Despite this, Hengel knows that, at the end of the day, it is still just basic magic, so it can't break through her ice shield. In fact, his broken ice shards are just making her wall grow even stronger, so she can reduce the amount of mana he spends on Ice Shield to save for an attack spell later. She'll have her chance when he uses up his mana and his attack stops, or so she thinks. Just then, Errol stops his attack and says that he can get on with the final blow now. Hengel is clearly confused, and she asks him if he really thinks he can break through this thick wall of ice. Errol explains that he purposely added onto it so that it can't break, and he warns her to watch her head. As soon as Hengel looks up, she's shocked to see a giant ice lance, and she can't believe he can still use another spell after dedicating mana to multiply his Ice Edge. Kufa tells her that she has no choice but to dodge it, but Hengel is completely trapped because of the ice shield. Having no escape, she creates another ice shield above in a desperate attempt to save herself. However, Errol's ice lance is so strong that her shield quickly starts coming apart, and Hengel can't believe she lost to a student. When all of Hengel's shields are destroyed, Errol sighs in relief, knowing that it's over. He mentions that he'd expect no less from a soon-to-be Archmage, and admits that she was tough to beat. Soon after that, he meets with the other kids, and Kufa tells them that Hengel said he can just go ahead and skip the grade. Now that that's solved, Arl doesn't waste any time and heads to the Green School of Magic to ask them to let him take the promotion exam. However, the instructor of this school tells him that there's nothing she can do without a compelling reason. Arl tells her that in the other schools, all he needed was instructor approval, but she reminds him that they have their rules and the Green School has their own. Even so, after reading the records, she mentions that there have been instances of the headmaster personally giving permission to students. However, if he's thinking of going to talk to the headmaster directly, then he should definitely forget about it. After all, the headmaster is very busy right now and can't afford to make time for a single student, and if he happens to disturb important school business, that can lead to immediate expulsion. Colette asks him why he's in such a hurry, and Errol tells her that there's someone he has his eye on, and he wants to master magic as soon as possible so he can catch up with that person. However, he's now stuck here and doesn't know what to do about it to move on. After hearing this, Colette comes up with a great idea, and sometime later, they go to the Green School's famous flight race. The winner of the race always gets honored by the headmaster in the award ceremony, and winning the race will also be a good way to prove his skills to them. The instructor tried to warn them that this race has over 300 participants, but Errol is still confident in Colette's plan. Before the race, the green-haired student from before approaches him to make fun of his poor skills, but Errol doesn't even remember who he is. Clearly offended, the guy introduces himself as Skake, saying that he's the guy who will become the world's greatest master of flight magic. He even assures him that he already has this race in the bag, but Errol tells him that he's going to win this time. Skake quickly questions him, saying that he couldn't even fly the other day, so he doesn't know what makes him so confident. Errol just tells him that he's been training a lot, but Skake guarantees he's put in 10 times as much practice as he has. He wishes him good luck not making a clown of himself out there before leaving. Errol isn't fazed by his comments, but the kids ask him to leave that guy in the dust. After a while, it's finally time to start this semester's Archmage's Cup, and everyone's excited. Running commentary is presented by Grid, the head of Grade 3. He explains that the course starts at the Green School and goes through the City of Magic's main gate, then takes one lap around the perimeter of the island and ends back where they started. Grid also mentions that they have the headmaster in attendance today, and also on commentary, they have instructor Dumble. All the girls start equally fawning over Dumble because of how handsome he is, but Kaido tries to remind them that he's a married man and he's way older than them. Grid asks all racers to take their places at the starting line, and once everyone's in position, the race finally starts. The beginning of the race is kind of chaotic, and several racers bump against each other. A kid even crashes against a wall after flying way too fast, and that leaves him out of the race. Dumble mentions that he made the same mistake last year, so it's clear he's incapable of learning, which is too bad, considering he's one of the fastest. Grid says that there are about 15 students in the leading pack, and among them is the soaring goddess, Dion. Dumble is a little surprised to see some unfamiliar faces, and two of them are newer students still in first grade. While they race, Skake asks Errol how he's able to keep up with the front of the pack, and Errol tells him it's because everyone's still moving pretty slow. Seeing Skake's confusion, he explains that this is a long race, so he won't last if he goes full speed right from the start, and that's why taking it slow for now is best. Skake nervously tells him that he already knew that, and assures him that he still has plenty left in the tank. Errol knows that keeping a good pace is easy, but the real problem is just up ahead at the gate. Grid announces that the front runners are almost at the institute's main entrance, which is a dangerous spot. After all, immediately after leaving the gate, the racers will have to hang a very sharp left. The leaders finally approach the main entrance, and some of them are unable to make the turn, so they hit the water instead. Skake manages to make the turn, and he's pretty sure he left Errol behind after that. However, in just a few seconds, he's shocked to see him by his side, still keeping up somehow. Grid announces that the leaders are already moving from the red school and heading to the yellow one. Both him and Dumble get near that area, saying that they're going to cut ahead now so they can keep tabs on their progress. Grid says that this race is reaching its halfway point at the boundary between the white and black schools. Dion has pulled far ahead and away from the pack, and Dumble mentions she's a powerful racer who won all 3 major races last year. It seems she's now left all of the competition behind, but everyone's shocked to see that the rookies are catching up. Grid says that 2 racers are surprisingly keeping up with Dion's breakneck speed, and they're both students in first grade. Dion is a little surprised that 2 rookies are catching up to her, and Skake assures her that he's going to win this race. She decides to test how fast he can go in that case, and immediately speeds up. Skake can't believe that she wasn't going full speed already, and Grid announces that she's swiftly leaving the rookies behind now. Despite the circumstances, Skake desperately tries catching up again, but he starts feeling breathless and knows that he's already out of mana. He yells out of frustration, and the commenters know that he's at his limit, but Dumble says that it's wonderful that he got this far in his first race, so they can expect great things from him in the future. Grid agrees with him and mentions that there's still 1 competitor left, and he's tenaciously going after Dion. When she realizes there's still 1 competitor left, Dion decides to go even faster and easily leaves him behind. Errol knows that he's only had 2 months of flight magic practice, and as it stands, he can't go any faster than this. That leaves him no other choice but to use his secret weapon, and he suddenly starts catching up. Dion is clearly surprised to see him by her side again, and the commenters don't even know what's going on. Errol just caught up with her with a sudden explosion of speed, but all they know is that he made a strange movement right before the boost. Dumble is clearly as shocked as everyone else, but after analyzing Errol's movements, he explains that he's jumping, creating a cluster of air beneath his feet and then jumping off it to accelerate himself. Grid didn't even know something like that was possible, and Dumble tells him that it is possible to condense air with green magic, and that makes it solid enough to jump off. However, the propulsion gained doesn't amount to much, and given that Errol has picked up so much speed, it's clear his strength must be tremendous. The only ones that have such strength are supreme-class swordsmen, so it's possible he has that kind of strength. After hearing that, Errol has to admit that the commentators have a really sharp eye for noticing that, but to be precise, he's using the Sky Swordsman skill, Soar. Grid announces that they are now in the home stretch, and the main entrance of the Institute of Magic has once again come into view. Both Errol and Dion are refusing to yield, so they won't know the outcome of this match until the bitter end. Dumble's expression suddenly turns concerned, and he says that they have to do one more sharp turn on the route before they reach the main entrance. However, if they rush into it at their current speed, it's going to be a huge problem. Despite this, Dion continues speeding, trying to leave Errol behind with all her might. She knows that she's going to be in trouble if she doesn't slow down soon, but they've been evenly matched in speed until now, so whoever slows down first will lose. Dion tries to wait until the right moment, but even as they get closer to the main entrance, she's shocked to see Errol doesn't slow down in the slightest. They rapidly approach the main entrance of the school, and Dion knows that she can't keep going this fast, so she's the first to slow down. Grid announces that Dion has reduced her speed, so Errol is now in the lead of the race. Kaido and the girls cheer for him, but Grid says that there is no way he can make the turn at that speed. Despite this, Errol manages to make the sharp turn, steering himself with his arms, doing the same he did with his feet earlier. Dumble sees this and mentions that it seems he has tremendous arm strength as well. Thanks to this, in a matter of seconds, Errol finally passes the finish line, officially winning the race. Dion soon catches up and approaches him, saying that she never thought she'd lose to a student in the first grade. Errol shakes her hand and tells her it was a good race, and Dion agrees, saying that he won't beat her again. Skate crosses the finish line for third place, though he immediately passes out after doing so. Finally, the headmaster meets with Errol and congratulates him on his victory. He gives him a certificate and an achievement medal as well, and Errol thanks him for it. However, he doesn't waste any time and asks him a favor, wanting to know if he would allow him to move up to the second grade. The headmaster tells him that he's made it clear he's an exemplary student, so he can go ahead. At any rate, it's quite impressive that a student in their first year would win, so he asks him where he learned magic. Errol simply tells him he learned in class, and the headmaster laughs at that smooth sidestep, knowing that he won't share his secret so easily. That aside, he says that he looks forward to seeing what he does in the future. Once he leaves, Errol is relieved that he's now in the second grade for red, blue, and green, so there's only 3 more left. When he goes to the Yellow School of Magic, though, the receptionist informs him that the registration deadline for the assembly has already long passed. Errol knows that he has to get a good grade at the assembly to skip a grade, so he asks her if she can make an exception for him. The receptionist tells him that he can't just jump in at the last minute because the schedule is packed due to a high number of participants. He has to wait until the next assembly, though the official date hasn't been decided yet, but it will be a few months down the road. Errol asks her to do something to help him because that's way too late for him, and he's created a brand new type of golem. As soon as he hears that, an instructor named Rogwell approaches him with interest. Errol explains that he created a new type of golem, but he forgot to register for the assembly. Rogwell then says that he'll register him as his research assistant because that way he can present his golem. Errol accepts without hesitation, but the receptionist sighs and says that she can't believe he'd become Instructor Rogwell's assistant of all people. That instructor is the absolute best at controlling golems, and he makes it a point to perform battles at every assembly. Errol mentions that it doesn't sound problematic to him, but she tells him that Rogwell always chooses students as his opponents and then crushes them mercilessly. Errol finds that kind of childish, and the receptionist informs him that she heard Rogwell was still looking for someone to be his opponent for this year, and that's why he showed up at the perfect time. She clarifies it's not too late to back out of it, but Errol asks her to register him as his assistant anyway, because it doesn't seem like there's any other way he can get into the assembly. On the day of the assembly, the host announces that today they'll have presentations from the teaching staff where they'll see some amazing earth magic. After various presentations, it's finally Instructor Rogwell's turn, and he says that for this presentation, he'd like to show them his spectacular battle golems. All the students already know what's coming, because he always chooses to torture new students. 4 earth golems emerge from the ground, and Kaido mentions those are totally different from the golems in the village, probably because they're battle golems. Rogwell says that their golems will now have a battle, so he asks Errol to get his ready. Errol then calls his golem Alpha, a golem with an armor made of metal, unlike any other. Everyone's surprised to see how different it looks, but they know there's no rule that says a golem has to be made of dirt. Errol explains that his golem is made of parts he created through alchemy magic, but he uses earth magic to control it. This is even more shocking to the crowd because they have never seen red metal like that, and it makes them wonder if it's a new type of mineral. The kids are the only ones who can't be surprised because they know Errol always does the craziest things as easily as he breathes air. After getting out of his shock, Rockwell laughs and asks him to stop joking around because that metal is too heavy to move with earth magic. He claims that the only reason this armor can move so smoothly is that he has a human hiding inside it, clearly. Despite his own words, when Rogwell takes the helmet off, he realizes that the armor is empty. Errol puts it back in place and tells him there's no one inside, but Rogwell mentions its parts are as light as paper. He looks a little disappointed as he says that he apparently sacrificed sturdiness to make it as lightweight as possible, which is a shame, since it seems he put a lot of work into it. However, it is bound to fall apart with only one blow blow from his golem. Rogwell still says that learning a lesson is still learning, so he sends his golems to attack Errol's without mercy, wanting to prove that his golems are the strongest ever created. One of his dirt golems runs towards Alpha to give it a blow, but Errol's golem stops it with one hand. Everyone is shocked when Rogwell's golem's arm completely crumbles and falls apart. Rogwell can't believe what he just witnessed, because Errol's golem is made of super frail metal. He just says that he apparently has to get serious, so he repairs the damage done to his golem and sets all units to their maximum toughness. Rogwell sends all his golems at once, saying that his colossal reserve of mana is his biggest weapon. With that, he can easily control several golems at once, and he's sure Errol can't handle attacks coming from every direction with just 2 arms. Knowing that there are multiple targets, Errol makes swords come out of his golem, saying that they'll have to use these instead of its bare hands. Alpha wields 2 swords now, and Rogwell admits that they look strong at first glance, but it was a bad move, so he's going to end him now. Errol simply tells him that won't happen, and in less than a second, Alpha slices all of Rogwell's golems without effort, turning them into a pile of dirt. Rogwell falls on his knees, completely in shock, with no idea of what just happened. Errol explains that he just cut them down like normal, but Rogwell tells him it's not normal at all, because golems can't do the complicated movements of a swordsman. Errol admits that he'd be right if this were a normal golem, but his golem as a thin, light armor that was made with alchemy magic. He also gave it flexible joints that he controls with earth magic, which improves mobility and reduces mana consumption. With the combination of material and control, his golem surpasses the abilities of older ones, and that's the outcome of his research. Rogwell says that it makes sense in theory, but it should be impossible to pull off. Errol asks him if it's enough to make him eligible for the promotion exam, but Rogwell clarifies that assistants are not eligible for that. However, if he joins his golem laboratory, he will approach the headmaster about him skipping a grade. Errol has no choice but to accept, since there isn't any other way. Later that day, he goes to the White School of Magic and meets Kaede, his examiner for the practical skills test. Errol asks her if she's okay, and Kaede assumes he's talking about her eyes, which always remain closed. She tells him that she can't see, but assures him there's no need to worry, because she can sense the magic that dwells in things. Kaede mentions that if she looks at his magic, he can also know his personality. As soon as he does that, her expression changes immediately, because she can't see an end to his mana reserve, and there are several types of magic mixed inside of him. It should be impossible to live like that, but they're all maintaining equilibrium somehow. Kaede now looks completely terrified, and Arel asks her if she's okay, but she clarifies that she could ask him the exact same thing. Leaving that aside, they head to the site for the exam, and she explains that it's a tomb from a long-fallen empire. It is where the royal family supposedly lays buried, so magic has been accumulating here for many years, and it is now an underground dungeon haunted by the undead. Errol uses a light spell and heads into the tomb, but Kaede warns him that the undead will come to eliminate any light source. Just as she said, several skeletons appear to attack him, but Errol simply uses Holy Ray to eliminate them, one by one. Everything is so easy that Errol even asks her if the exam site is further in the tomb, but Kaede clarifies that the task was to defeat the undead that appeared here, so he already passed. She tells him they have to head back already, because if he keeps using his magic over and over like that, he'll run out on his way out. Arel clarifies that he's only used about 1% of what he has though, but Kaede tells him that he doesn't need to prove anything else to her. She turns around to leave the tomb, but Errol suddenly uses Holy Ray to attack a hidden undead that not even Kaede could detect. Kaede instantly detects the sinister aura coming from the undead, and the skeleton suddenly speaks, praising him for spotting him. If he can hide his presence, Kaede knows that it must be an advanced class undead. Before the skeleton can introduce itself, Errol uses Holy Ray again, not letting it finish. The skeleton is clearly offended that he interrupted him like that, because it's common courtesy to wait until after he finishes. Errol doesn't listen and continues attacking with the same spell, but the skeleton tells him that he can't defeat him with that level of magic. Errol then decides to use Holy Cross instead, making the skeleton completely disintegrate. Kaede is left speechless, and her expression turns even more terrified, but Errol just continues walking, saying that they must head back and get his promotion paperwork submitted. Kaede quickly catches up, saying that based on the mana she sensed from it, that monster was an advanced class undead white. Errol admits that it was a little different from the others, since it could actually speak. Kaede also mentions that his Holy Cross spell is a high-level magic only seasoned exorcists blessed with true talent can pull off. Arel is a little confused at that, because he believed it was the same as Holy Ray. That aside, now that he's done with the White School of Magic, he heads to the only one left, the Black School of Magic. While he studies, Latalia suddenly appears in front of him, and Arel doesn't hesitate to send her head flying. She quickly runs to pick it up, saying that it's really mean of him to just suddenly chop her head off like that. Arel tells her that she's interrupting his reading, though it's hard to believe that the School of Black Magic has no promotion exam. Latalia clarifies that there was one in the past, but the system itself has fallen apart, and they hardly have any students either. Arel looks around and confirms that there aren't many students, since they're the only ones there. He spots a dark door and asks Latalia what's the deal with that private room at the back of the reading room. It has a really sturdy door, but there's nothing inside of it after all. Latalia explains that it's a room to try out magic spells written in the books. Other schools can test their magic outside freely, but casting black magic saps people of their lifespans. Knowing that's that's the case, Errol says that he'll try a spell from one of the more challenging grimoires. Once in the room, Errol finds a book with no title nor author written on it, and as soon as he opens it, a great amount of mana just pours out from it. He then sees some kind of demon who thanks him for setting him free, saying that he can't believe he's been cooped up in there for so long. Not a soul at this school has touched that book, and that means he's his savior, and he has to thank him somehow. Errol simply declines, but the demon insists, saying that he's going to need a catalyst to get back to the demon world, namely the fresh blood and flesh of humans, so he'll let him be his sacrifice. The demon immediately attacks him, but Errol blocks him with his wand and tells him that he's going to have to refuse. He tries to use an explosion spell, but his magic never activates, and the demon explains that he's already in his barrier, which blocks all magic. Errol then says that he'll just fight him with his wand instead, but the demon reminds him that spellcasters don't know how to fight. However, he freezes entirely when Errol simply slices his head off with the wand. His head is back in place in a second though, so Errol assumes he has immortal protection like Latalia. The demon can't believe he just cut his head off with a simple wand, so he's now pretty sure he's a magic swordsman. Errol clarifies that he's classless and immediately starts attacking him with the wand. The demon tells him that his class doesn't make a difference, because just getting cut up like this can't kill him. Despite his words, Errol doesn't stop, and the demon starts getting smaller with every cut. Errol mentions that demons have some strange physical properties, and the demon says that he's going to use up all his mana at this rate. Errol never stops anyway, finding it funny and saying that he wants to see how tiny he can get. After a while, the demon is even smaller than the grimoire he came out of, and he begs for mercy, saying that he's going to disappear if he keeps going. Errol tells him that he's willing to let him go, but he places a servitude seal on him. The demon asks him why he should be a servant to some human brat, but his body immediately sets on fire, making him suffer. Errol explains that he created the seal to inflict intense pain if he rebels against him, and the demon tells him that he's even more demonic than he is. He quickly surrenders to stop the pain, and Latalia approaches Errol to find out what the whole ruckus is about. Errol explains that he made this demon his familiar, and Latalia is clearly surprised, saying that he's always doing the impossible. Sometime later, the kids congratulate Errol for passing the yellow magic and white magic school exams. Since the black school of magic doesn't have an exam, that means he's skipped to the second grade in all schools. Errol mentions that it was easier than he thought, and asks the demon to go buy some bread for lunch. The demon reminds him that his name is Mustima, and he clarifies that he won't be doing any chores for a human. His body is set on fire again, so he has no choice but to obey. Though while he goes to get some bread, he says that he's going to break that contract and get his revenge one day. 6 months later, we see the heads of all magic schools waiting for a meeting to start. Blag Rakuro, the head of the Black Institute of Magic, is impatiently waiting for the meeting to be over with because he's behind on his research. The secretary decides to start the meeting already and gives each one of the headmasters some documents. He explains that, as things currently stand, these are the grant allocations they're considering for the next year. These grants, which are akin to an operation budget for the institute, are only possible thanks to residential taxes as well as donations. Thus, the amount is determined by the number of their school's staff and students and the contributions they make to the city. The secretary asks them if there are any objections, and all the headmasters are seemingly content with their budgets. However, Blag immediately objects, asking him why the Black School of Magic gets less than 40% of the amount they got last year. The secretary clarifies that he would argue their budget has always been too high, considering their staff and student numbers plus the contributions made to the city. All of it comes to less than 10% of what any other school does. Therefore, it has been decided that the amounts for next year will be revised appropriately. Blag tells him that there's no way good research can be done here with that amount. However, Redora Akaman, the head of the Red Institute of Magic, asks him if any research he's done here has ever been good at all. Wito Al-Shiron, the head of the White Institute of Magic, mentions that black magic is designated by the country as a dangerous art, so perhaps the city should soon reconsider how it's being moderated. Blag assumes she's suggesting they ban black magic, but the secretary clarifies they have no plan to discuss that matter at this point in time. To finish the meeting, he says that it will be officially finalized following the results of the 6th Institute Magic Contest. Blag just glares at him as the other headmasters leave the room, but the secretary clarifies it won't change a thing, and, as he just said, the results of the contest will also affect the numbers. If the Black School of Magic wins, it will be considered a contribution to city tourism, and they can keep the allocation the same as last year. Blag knows that at this rate, the Black School of Magic will be decimated, and he can't let that happen. A few days later, Arel is a little impressed by the decorations they're doing at school, and he asks the kids if the Magilord Festival is famous or something. Kufa tells him it's so famous, not a person alive doesn't know about it, but Errol clarifies it's the first time he's heard of it. Kaido asks him if he hasn't heard of the 6 Institute's magic contest either, and Errol tells him he does know that one. It's a magic competition with all 6 schools of magic battling against each other, the main event of the festival. He was asked to be part of the rookie battle, but he's not limited to just one school of magic. Mustima reminds him that the magic contest is school versus school, so he has to decide which one he will compete with. Errol tells him that he's supposed to meet with the headmasters tomorrow morning, so he assumes they're going to tell him the details then. But the festival starts tomorrow, and the rookie battles are on day 1, so it's pretty sloppy sloppy planning for such a big event. That night, we see Blag finishing up a suspicious magic circle, saying that he's going to teach all those fools a lesson about the magnificence of black magic. He summons the ultimate monster from the demon realm, Gluttony. However, the monster immediately swallows him whole, completely ignoring his orders. Blag realizes way too late that he can't control the monster at all, and there's nothing he can do about it. After Blag is devoured by Gluttony, the monstrous slime continues devouring all the monsters enclosed in that place, leaving nothing but bones. The next morning, Errol wakes up after dreaming about everything he's experienced at the magic school. Now that it's finally time for the festival, all the headmasters gather, and everyone notices Blag's absence. They don't give it much thought, though, and Redora even says that it's hard to tell if any of the people at his school are actually students. Bluena Aeoline, the head of the Blue Institute of Magic, agrees, and says that it's no wonder why it's on the verge of shutting down. Yellowa Kirasi, the head of the Yellow Institute of Magic, reminds them that the students each of them picked to participate in the rookie battle of the 6 Institute Magic contest should arrive soon. Guido tells him that the rookie battle is held on the first day of the contest, and involves a freshman representative from each school competing against each other. Redora says that they have to start things off with a bang, so he picked a real crackerjack from his students. Bluena tells him that she guarantees it will be her choice from the Blue School of Magic who brings home the gold. Gren Elmidori, the head of the Green Institute of Magic, clarifies that he has a great deal of confidence that his school will stand on top. Yellowa reminds them that it's hard to say anything when their chosen students haven't arrived. Just then, Errol arrives for the meeting, and each one of the headmasters says that he's their student. That leaves them very confused because it means they all picked Errol, but they didn't know he attended all schools. Before they can question anything, they hear chaos and screams in the distance, which makes them stand alert. A few seconds before the disaster, we see the kids preparing everything for the contest, but they notice a slime devouring monsters in the distance. When Gluttony trespasses in the school, Kaido warns everyone and asks them to run from the giant slime, because it's clearly more than they can take. All students run away from the monster, and Errol decides to go there, while the headmasters follow him. Royce tries to stop the slime with a fire lance, but it doesn't do anything to the monster. He decides to use a more powerful eruption spell, but this does nothing to Gluttony. The slime also tries to devour him, but Dion saves Royce just in time thanks to her fast flight magic. On the other hand, Kaido, Colette, and Kufa are about to be caught by Gluttony. Colette trips at the worst possible moment, so her friends immediately stop to defend her. Kufa casts an ice wall spell as a shield, but Gluttony completely destroys it in a second. Kaido quickly tries something he learned from Arl, a modified eruption spell, way more powerful than the original. This manages to slow down the slime just a bit, but it does nothing to stop it, so they know they can't escape. Colette panics and remembers Errol's words when he told her that nobody's life gets ruined over a single screw-up. She knows that this time she will actually die if she screws up, but that's all the more reason she can't give up. More determined than ever, Colette uses a tornado spell against the slime, but Gluttony simply devours it. Colette already saw that coming, and she knows there's nothing she can do anymore, but she's glad she fought until the end and didn't worry about messing up. Just when they're about to get devoured by Gluttony, Errol shows up just in time to save them and praises them for their good job. The kids are completely relieved to see him, and they're even more surprised to see all the headmasters standing next to him. Yellowa asks them to evacuate to City Hall with all the other students, so Kaido, Kufa, and Colette instantly run, following his instructions. Arel asks them if they don't need him to fight, but Redora tells him that headmasters are supreme class, so they can handle this on their own. Bluena just asks him to sit back and watch what happens when teachers get serious, and Yellowa reminds him that it's their duty to protect the lives of their students. Arel understands and decides to stand back while the headmasters of all schools face Gluttony, knowing that they've never seen a slime quite like that before. Guido mentions that it came from the Black Institute of Magic, so she'd really like to hear from Blag about this. Redora says that it's possible it has magic resistance based on what happened in that earlier fight. Bluena reminds him that those were only spells cast by students, so they probably weren't powerful enough. She immediately uses a blue magic spell called Permafrost, and Guido supports her with her white magic, using Holy Cross on the slime. Gluttony gets completely frozen, but it quickly breaks through the ice like it's nothing. Bluena and Guido are both shocked because that was the best they had. After seeing that, the headmasters of the Red and Green Institute of Magic decide to team up against the slime. Redora uses a red magic spell called Prominence, and Gren uses a green magic spell called Tempest. The ground surrounding Gluttony turns into lava, while a strong tornado hits the monster from above. Despite the powerful combination of spells, the slime is still completely intact, and they know that this is bad. Gren explains, alarmed, that this monster is not resistant to their magic, but it's feeding off it. Gluttony is now stronger than before, so it attacks them fiercely, and Yellowa quickly casts a yellow magic spell, creating 4 grand walls to enclose the monster. The slime soon starts breaking through it, so Yellowa knows that his spell won't hold for long. Guido mentions that this monster doesn't resist magic, but it absorbs it and uses it to grow larger. Redora says that maybe if they attack all at once, they can overwhelm it and do some damage. Guido tells him that's not a good idea, because they don't know how much it can absorb. If it has no limit and just keeps growing, they won't be able to fight it. Bluena asks her how they're supposed to fight it now in that case, but just then, Gluttony breaks through the walls. Errol calmly observes the whole thing, noticing that the headmasters only used spells spells that he's heard about from his father or read about in books, so it doesn't seem like there's much else for him to learn in the City of Magic now. Mastema shows up and asks him if he's truly just spectating now, but Errol reminds him that the headmasters told him they could handle it. He admits that it's also partly because he wanted to see what magic they used, though. Mastema mentions that gluttony slimes can be nasty, and he never thought he'd see one outside the demon realm. Errol suddenly grabs him, saying that it sounds like he knows something, so he should start talking already. Mastema panics and clarifies that he doesn't have to threaten him, so Errol quickly lets go of him. Once he calms down, Mastema explains that that slime has the ability to absorb all things and then grow bigger. It especially likes mana, which means every time it eats magic, it grows. Mastema laughs and says that these headmasters are using mana on it like a bunch of fools. Errol asks him what about magic so powerful that it can't absorb it all, or physical attacks delivered faster than it can process. Mastema tells him that he doesn't think any spells could be that powerful, and he imagines it will just eat any weapon he tries to hit it with, whether sword or spear. Despite that, Errol says that it's worth testing out, so he quickly uses magic to create a sword. Mastema asks him what he's doing, and Errol reminds him that he knows how to handle a sword. The demon reminds him that he was using a wand to fight him last time, but Errol tells him that he thought it'd be best to use a proper sword when he fights that slime. Mastema easily gets offended, asking him if he's saying that he wasn't even worth using a sword on. He reminds him that he's demon royalty, but Errol completely ignores him and decides to go, so he asks him to hurry. Mastema is a little surprised that he wants him to go with him, so Errol reminds him that he's his familiar. Having no other choice, Mastema follows after him until they find the gluttony slime, which is now bigger than the buildings in the city. All the headmasters stand back, knowing that they're out of options now, and the slime is heading for the city center. Seeing its growing size, they start wondering if giving up the City of Magic is their only choice. Just as they're about to give up and evacuate the people, Errol falls from the sky using Dragon Fang Slice. His attack is so powerful even the kids can see it from the shelter, and they know it's Errol who's fighting. Mastema is shocked that Errol actually cut through the gluttony slime, but it soon starts regenerating, showing that it didn't do any damage. The headmasters approach him on a flying carpet, clearly shaken by what they just witnessed. Redora asks him why he can use a sword, wanting to know if he's always been a swordsman. Guido says that he never mentioned his class before, and Bluena assumes that he's actually a magic swordsman. Errol simply discards all their theories and informs them that he's classless, but that leaves them even more confused. It's clear none of them believe something like that, but Errol just asks them to leave, because that slime loves eating mana, so it attacks spellcasters. Redora refuses to leave and tells him that they can't run off and leave a student behind. Gren tries to process the information and quickly understands that the slime is heading for the city hall in pursuit of the student's mana. Redora immediately says that they have to stop it, because they can't let that happen, but Bluena reminds him that they can't use magic. Just then, Errol uses Infinite Break on the gluttony slime, landing infinite cuts in a second. He asks the headmasters to let him handle this, saying that he will slow it down. Some of the headmasters hesitate, but they all decide to let him, and Redora asks him not to overdo it. While the slime regenerates, the headmasters head for the city hall to protect the kids. Mastema makes fun of Errol, saying that his attacks aren't doing anything against the demon realm slime, which is exactly what he expected. Errol threateningly grabs him again, saying that he's such a rude familiar, so he'll feed him to the slime as punishment. Mastema panics and tells him that a punishment like that is way harder than the crime. Errol ignores Mastema's cries and approaches the gluttony slime to give him a tasty mana snack. To his surprise, the slime starts running away, making him wonder if demons taste bad enough to make it do that. Mastema clarifies that he's pretty sure the gluttony slime just knows they'd be a pain to fight. Errol knows that things will get annoying if it manages to escape, so he creates a grand wall to enclose it again. He then uses golem creation to summon 4 armored golems, wanting to find out if the gluttony slime can come back from being thoroughly minced. Errol attacks the gluttony slime with quintuple infinite break, landing infinite cuts from all the golems and himself at the same time. The kids cheer from the city hall, while the headmasters observe in the distance in disbelief. They can't believe Errol is skilled with a sword on top of being able to use multiple types of magic. Bluena wonders if he truly is classless, and Guido mentions that he even has a demon familiar, so it looks like he can also use black magic. After that attack, all the golems completely fall apart, and Errol realizes that even his beta golems couldn't withstand using infinite break. Apparently, mincing the slime into a million pieces didn't work, so Mastema asks him if he's ready to give up. Errol denies it, saying that if the sword won't work, then he'll beat him with magic. This only makes Mastema laugh even harder, saying that he already knows magic doesn't work, so it sounds like he's grasping at straws. Errol clarifies that he only has to use a spell it can't absorb. Mastema notices that he's trying to use a red magic spell, but he warns him that it isn't going to work. Errol tells him it's not red magic, and confesses that he honestly wanted to avoid using this spell. Just then, Mastema realizes that he's using all 6 magic circles at once. Errol then decides to combine them all into one attack, creating a multicolored giant magic circle. He remembers what his father taught him when Leon said that, on top of being difficult to control, the effects of this magic circle are extremely dangerous, so if it's at all possible, he should refrain from using it. He explained that it is a tremendously powerful spell that is activated by cycling through all 6 attributes simultaneously. Leon warns warned him that just one misstep would wipe out the spellcaster and everything around them. Knowing this, Errol still decides to give it a try, and soon realizes his father truly is something, because he can barely maintain control through parallel thinking and his mana reserves. As he tries to control the magic circle, the gluttony slime tries to reach for him, and Mastema is pretty sure he's already done for. It's clear Errol's mana isn't enough right now, but just when he thinks it's over, all the students from all magic schools give him their mana, and the headmasters make sure he can receive it. Thanks to this, Errol manages to complete the magic circle, and he uses a powerful spell called Elimination. The gluttony slime is instantly reduced to nothing, and that spell alone wipes out the whole place. Mastema can't believe what he just saw, and Errol quickly grabs him again, saying that even an annoying regenerating slime can't come back from being totally eradicated with one huge attack. Now more than ever, Mastema panics and nervously calls him boss, saying that he had complete faith that he'd win. Errol squeezes him, knowing that that's a blatant lie. He decides to take a moment to recover, realizing that invoking all 6 types of magic at once is tough. All the headmasters approach him, confirming that he used annihilation magic, though they don't understand how he's able to use that. After all, it's supposed to be a legendary spell that only the rare ultimate class Magilord can use. Bluena wonders if Errol is a Magilord, but she then remembers that he said he was classless. Guido mentions that he's way too young, so he must be lying about both his age and class. Yellowa tells her that his age doesn't matter, and asks Errol what he did to become a Magilord. Once again, Errol calmly informs them that he's classless, but his father is a Magelord, so he learned annihilation magic from him. Redora asks him if he's talking about Leon, and Errol is surprised that he knows about his father. Redora tells him that Leon was his schoolmate, but thanks to that guy, he always came in second place. Leon was even praised as a future headmaster, until he quit midway through the second year. Bluena apparently also knows about him, so Errol asks her if his father was known in the blue school as well. She tells him that she does remember a younger schoolmate with that name, but he suddenly disappeared. Errol explains that his father said he studied all the practices one by one, and Yellowa admits that he remembers him attending his classes as well. All the headmasters remember Leon, apparently, and Gren asks Aurel if his father told him the secret to becoming a Magilord. Aurel confirms it, saying that he just has to acquire all skills across the magic spectrum and raise them to their highest level. This information shocks all the headmasters, and they realize that no matter how much they master one type of magic, they can never become a Magilord. Their current style of teaching with schools divided by magic type will not raise any Magilords in that case, and that also means they need to keep the Black Magic Institute around. Just as they come to that realization, Aurel disappears without them noticing, and finds the gluttony slime, which is now as small as his hands. Mastema tells him that he should finish it off now, but Aurel says that he was thinking he could put a servant seal on it now that it's so weak. After making gluttony his familiar, Aurel confirms that it's great for getting rid of trash, just like he figured. Mastema is a little disgusted that he's using it as a trash can now, and he wonders why the slime seems so attached to him even after what happened. Aurel explains that slimes don't feel pain, and it probably feels like the fighting they did was a game. Just then, the kids burst into his room, trying to convince him not to leave and to stay until graduation. Aurel tells them that there's nothing else at this school that he can learn, so he's going to drop out, but he'll stop by here again if he gets the chance. Colette asks him what he'll do after he quits the institute, and Errol tells her that he'll go back home first. After all, they might be worried because he didn't say anything when he left. After that, he's going to the City of Monsters, the city where monsters from around the world gather. He gained a new monster servant, so he has to study how to handle them now. After their talk, we see in another scene that the Mayor Noel is scolding the headmasters because he can't believe that a magic user of Errol's caliber would leave the city. Simply having a rare Supreme Class Magilord around would be a huge economic boon, so they can't possibly let him leave just like that. Bluen clarifies that they have no right to stop him if he wants to leave the institute, and they can't force him to stay either. Blag tries to reassure him, saying that they now know the requirements to becoming a Magilord, which means they can just raise new Magilords. Noel says that it will take a long time, but just then, he realizes that Blag is in the room, and that completely spooks him. All the headmasters are just as shocked, and Blag explains that only his physical body was eaten by the slime. Despite his explanation, it's clear all the headmasters are kind of terrified, but he laughs and says that he's glad he made it back, because black magic is indispensable to becoming a Magilord. No one in the room can deny that, but they're still worried about the future of the City of Magic. Once he's finally ready, Errol decides to say goodbye to Kaido, Colette, and Kufa, using the beautiful magic spell his father used before he left. With that, he finally heads home, wanting to see his father and everyone else again. As he leaves, a mysterious woman observes him with interest from the city gates, not saying a word. Not so long after, the Empress of an Empire receives this information and orders her forces to make sure to stay one step ahead of Aurel. While Errol flies home, Mastema asks him if it's been a while since he was in his home village. Errol tells him that he hasn't been back since he came to the City of Magic, so it's been about a year. Both Gluttony and Mastema are left a little thoughtful, and Errol notices this, so he asks them what's wrong. Mastema explains that he just can't imagine what kind of people his family are, considering how strong he is. Aurel clarifies that his parents are normal villagers, but Mastema doesn't buy that at all, and he asks him if he's going going to say that they're classless too. Arl informs him that his mother is actually a sword god, and his father is a magilord. Mastima tells him that that's not normal at all, but as always, Arl doesn't seem to care. Once the sun starts setting, he decides to spend the night in a nearby city and goes to the hot springs to relax. Mastima and Gluttony also relax with him, but Arl quickly tries to hide them when someone else enters the hot springs. A girl asks him if she can join him, and Arl allows her, knowing that it did say this place allows mixed bathing. Very pleased with his answer, the girl enters the water and asks him for his name, without even introducing herself. Arl tells her without problem, but Mastima mentions that it's a little weird that she didn't tell him her name. The two of them sit in silence for a while, and the girl asks him if he comes here often. Arl clarifies that it's his first time, and explains that he happened to find this place on his way back to his home village. Mastima quietly whispers to him, and warns him that this girl is not just some regular lady. Arl looks at her closely, and he already can tell that Mastima is right, but he doesn't seem to mind. Mastima quickly understands that Arl doesn't care if she attacks, because the only thing on his mind is that he can get to see new skills. Arl smiles and tells him that he knows him very well already, though Mastima is clearly tired of this. The girl ignores their muttering and asks Arl what the purpose of his journey is. Arl simply tells her that it's to get stronger, and she asks him if he likes to fight. He clarifies that it's not necessarily like that, and explains that he just wants to find out how strong he can get as someone who's classless. The girl is a little surprised to hear he's classless, and asks him if he has any skills. Arl mentions that he has none in particular, but something like that hasn't held him back. She then asks him if people make fun of or laugh at him, and Arl admits that they do, but it doesn't bother him. Hearing that, the girl decides to offer him to go to her home, the Empire. She explains that in the Empire, there are no people that will laugh at him for his class, since the Empress has banned that behavior, and he would have an easy life. Arl admits that it sounds like a good country, but he refuses either way, and reminds her that he already said that he's not having any issues. Besides, there's somewhere else he wants to go, and he's not changing his plans. Before the girl can say anything else, Arl decides to return to his room to have dinner, and his familiars also enjoy the feast. Mastima asks him if he's sure about turning down her offer, because he might be happy living in the Empire, and when that happens, he can get rid of him. Arl rejects the idea once more, so Mastima gives up on his hopes of freedom and accepts that people have different things that float their boats. The next day, Arl continues his journey, but before leaving the city, the girl from before finds him again and asks him to stop. She introduces herself as one of the 8 Imperial Generals, Shinobi Princess Kureha. Without leaving him any choice, she informs him that he will come with her by order of the Empress. Arl reminds her that he already told her he wasn't going, but Kureha warns him that the orders of the Empress can't be defied. He easily dismisses it and says that he has nothing to do with that Empress, and he doesn't even know why the leader of that country is looking for him in the first place. Kureha tells him that she doesn't know either, but it's a very important mission, so there must be a good reason. She explains that the Empress has been searching for a classless man named Arl for a long time. Arl clarifies that something like that won't make him change his mind, but Kureha assures him that the Empress is a goddess, so she will do him no harm. Despite her attempts to convince him, Arl gets a little irritated and tells her one more time that he's not going. Without hesitation, Kureha vanishes in an instant and appears right behind him to take him by surprise with an attack. Arl easily dodges her and warns her that if she wants a fight, then he won't show mercy either. He uses Blink Dash to disappear again, and in less than a second, he attacks her with a strong kick. Kureha manages to block the blow with her arms, but the impact sends her flying away anyway. Arl quickly senses around 10 people nearby and asks them to stop hiding and show themselves. In no time, a group of skilled shinobis surround him, and one of them asks him how he knew they were there. After all, they all use the stealth skill to hide their presence. Arl clarifies that even so, they can't erase the fact that people are there, and even though one person might fly under his radar, 10 of them give him enough uneasy vibes to notice. The shinobi takes her mask off and reveals that it's the woman who spotted Arl leaving the City of Magic, one of Kureha's subordinates. When Kureha stands back up, her subordinate quickly starts treating her, clearly worried about her. Arl simply observes and notices that Kureha's divine protection has hardly dissipated. That alone lets him know that she's clearly the strongest one of this group. Even though she's young, Kureha is completely unharmed after Arl's attack, but her subordinate worries more about the fact that she's covered in mud now. Kureha pushes away from her and orders her to focus on capturing Arl, because he's not a mere classless person. While the shinobis attack Arl all at once, another group quickly approaches the area. The leader is another woman from the Empire, and she asks her subordinates to hurry, because at this rate, Kureha is going to steal all the credit. In the meantime, another woman from the Empire rides a dragon with the same mission, saying that they must catch the classless Arl as soon as possible for the Empress. When everyone gets there, they're all shocked to find Kureha's forces on the ground, completely defeated. They even wonder how many people they were up against, but Kureha's subordinate clarifies that they only fought one, a classless person. None of them can believe that only one person did all of this, but just then, Arl comes out from behind a tree, enjoying a snack. Mastima tells him that they should have hurried out of here, but Arl explains that all the fighting made him hungry again. When they see Arl, one of the women admits that he does look like a formidable opponent. Even so, she introduces herself as the Dragon Princess, Dora, one of the esteemed 8 generals of the Empire, and tells him him that he will come and see the Empress. The other woman stops her right there and introduces herself as the Beast Lord Tirga, saying that that duty is hers. They're clearly fighting over who will have the credit, but Errol clarifies that they can all come at him at once or attack him one after another, but he has one thing to ask of them. This takes them a little off guard, but they decide to listen, and Errol tells them that he wants each of them to attack with their best skill possible. The girls quickly accept his request, but Dora asks him not to die until they bring him in front of the Empress. Errol prepares for what's coming, and both Tirga and Dora attack with their best skills. However, the two of them are on the ground in a second, and Errol is a little disappointed since none of them showed him notable skills. Mastema tells him that he really needs to start thinking of himself as being superhuman. Errol simply mentions that he would like to know why this Empress is so desperate to have him. Kureha somehow manages to speak, saying that the Empress reigns supreme as the strongest of the land. Errol is kind of surprised by how fast she came back to her senses, though it's clear she can't move yet. Kureha tells him that he's strong, but he is still no match for the skill of the Empress. That immediately catches his interest, and Errol is now curious what skill it could be. He would like to know if it works differently from his mother's swordsmanship and his father's magic. Mastema already knows what he's thinking, and he doesn't look thrilled by the idea, but Errol confirms his suspicions and informs him that he will indeed head there now. Despite the demon's protests, Errol is at the entrance of the Imperial Castle in no time thanks to his flight magic. He's welcomed by 4 strong-looking women, and one of them thanks him for going out of his way to come here. She introduces herself as the Battle Princess, Rihanna, one of the 8 Imperial Generals. The woman next to her introduces herself as one of the same, the Spectre Lord Igbergia. The 2 remaining women also introduce themselves, saying that they're also one of the 8 Imperial Generals, the Great Saint, Fina, and the Pirate Princess, Kinna. Kinna challenges him to fight, and Errol tells them that if they're showing him their skills, then he'll battle as much as they want, though he doesn't want to hear any complaining when they get hurt. All the women prepare to fight, though Mastema is clearly worried about them, knowing that they shouldn't even try. In no time, they fall defeated right in front of the Empress, and Errol is very disappointed once again. He says that he thought with a name like 8 Imperial Generals, they'd have some amazing skills to see, but none of that was very impressive. The woman guarding the Empress stares at him in shock, realizing that he really beat all of them. She introduces herself as the Magic Swordsman, Ernella, the last member of the 8 Imperial Generals. Before they can initiate a fight, the Empress suddenly runs to Errol and hugs him, and he then realizes that the Empress is actually his older sister, Astaire. Errol manages to push her away and asks her why he's here, wanting to know why she's acting like an empress. Astaire reminds him that she made a promise to him, so she made her own country without class discrimination. Here, people won't belittle the classless, and he can live an enjoyable and peaceful life. That's why they will all live here together, and she's going to send for their parents and Mira to come here. Errol simply tells her that she doesn't need to do that, but Astaire is clearly full of indignation and doesn't understand why. She tells him that she did all of this for him, and she worked really hard for a long time. Errol thanks her for that, but he apologizes, saying that there are things he wants to do elsewhere, and that's why he can't stay here forever. Astaire asks him what he wants to do exactly, wanting to know if it's really impossible for him to stay. Errol tells her that he's classless, but that's precisely why he can master anything, and unlike everyone else, his potential is limitless. He enjoys putting in hard work, spending his time learning new skills, customizing them, and getting stronger, because it's something he finds fun. Leaving home and traveling lead him to meeting lots of different types of people, and he learned that each of them have their own ideas and goals. That sort of experience also made him grow. So, while he's grateful for what she's done for him, he wants to keep moving freely, like he is now, because he's happy that way. Hearing this, Astaire understands that he became an adult as well, so she tells him that he can do as he likes. Errol thanks her and says goodbye, saying that he'll come back to see her when he feels up to it. Despite this agreement, just as Errol turns to leave, Astaire decides that she'll do whatever she wants as well. Ernella instantly realizes that she will use the strongest skill that makes all obey her, like an order from the gods themselves, Heaven's will. She asks her if she's really going to use that skill to make her younger brother follow her desires. Astaire confirms this, saying that little brothers are supposed to obey their older sisters. With just a word, she immediately stops Errol from moving any further and asks him to turn her way. Errol's body moves against his will to face her, and just then, Astaire uses her skill to order him to marry her. All the 8 Imperial Generals are shocked to hear that, but Astaire doesn't back down and uses her skill again. Errol doesn't move from his place, so Astaire decides to make the first move and immediately runs towards him to give him a kiss. To her surprise, Errol stops her with a kick, and that leaves her very shocked and confused, wondering why her skill isn't working on him, since Heaven's will is absolute. Errol explains that he heard that the Empress skill was the strongest, so he thought about what it could be on the way here. He understood it from when he was first stuck, and it wasn't that she had cast a charm spell on him, or his legs were physically unable to move. On the contrary, he could tell the spirit of the wind was at work, and then he thought that the conditions for casting Heaven's will might be to have the subject hear her voice. That's why he made it so he temporarily couldn't hear anything around him with wind magic. Moreover, apparently, she can't give 2 different orders at the same time. Feeling cornered, Astaire quickly starts bawling her eyes out, and Ernella tries to comfort her. Errol tells her that he does think that skill is the strongest, depending on how she uses it. After all, she made the 8 Imperial Generals here follow her using that, that for sure. The great Saint Fina immediately denies it, saying that it wasn't like that at all. That gets him a little confused, so Rihanna explains that they were deeply moved by the Empress's will and chose to follow her to the bitter end. The other imperial generals agree, saying that the Empress's devotion to the country is not a lie either. Arel is genuinely surprised for once, and he soon understands that his sister has grown up too. Astaire looks up at him with tearful eyes and hope, but Arel simply says goodbye again, glad to see that she's doing well. Once he's gone, Astaire is left defeated on the floor, but she recognizes that Errol still worries about her despite everything. Ernella reassures her, saying that it's true, but just then, Astaire suddenly stands up with a jump, claiming that it means he really does love her, and the love between siblings is eternal, so she's going to wait for him. Astaire also says that she's going to get much stronger and come to make him hers, and she's not going to give up. The 8 imperial generals are all a little creeped out by her behavior, but they know that there is nothing they can do to control the Empress. Time passes by, and when Errol finally returns home, he tells his parents that he's gotten even stronger. Farah happily hugs him and tells him that she doesn't mind him going wherever he wants, as long as he doesn't get hurt. She also wishes that he had let them know ahead of time that he was coming home, and Errol tells her that he'll do that starting next time. Mira also welcomes him with a hug and scolds him for disappearing on her so suddenly. Errol apologizes and lets her play with Mestima and Gluttony, like they're simple souvenirs. He also mentions that he met Astaire, and she's doing well, more or less. Reiner is happy to see him well, and she decides to visit him in his room that night, nervously saying that she was hoping they could talk a little bit since it's been a year without seeing each other. She tells him that she wanted to ask him more about the City of Magic, and Errol says that he wants to hear more about what she's done too. Reiner is a little surprised by that, and admits that she always thought he had absolutely no interest in her. Errol explains that this past year, she's been training intensely with his mother, so he's dying to find out just how much stronger she's gotten. Reiner laughs and realizes that's all he cared about, though it's normal coming from him, so she gladly talks to him all night. Some time passes, and one morning, Mira catches everyone's attention with her cries. In tears, she tells them that Errol went off somewhere again, and only left a note without saying goodbye. This time, the news doesn't surprise anyone, and Reiner even smiles, saying that she already had the feeling he would do that. Errol uses flight magic to head for his next destination, wondering what type of skill he'll encounter next.